Do do
Mm-hmm.
do do. How you doing,
Do
guys?
do 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 do.
Yeah. What's up, JV?
What's up, friend?
I feel like I haven't
Is
talked to you live
is
in 2 days.
I know. I like that we both decided to wear earth tones. Um, is the dude not here? Is
The
he sick?
dude is Sans. We are Sans the
Okay.
dude.
Okay.
Said he was still hacking this morning, and his voice
Mm,
was
mm,
no
mm,
good.
mm.
So
All right.
we made an executive decision for him to stay home, and by that I mean he told me he wasn't coming.
Okay.
So yeah,
I'm glad you were able to weigh in.
yeah.
Very
To which
cool.
I said, I agree, and let's make
Hmm.
this my idea that you
Also,
stay
yeah,
home.
you don't need to be getting sick either, and I'm sorry that he
No.
is.
Weird time. Weird time. It's been like in the 70s here. Weird time to
Hmm.
get sick.
I'm going to
So
send him a quick text. I'm sure that won't offend or shock anyone.
that you're sending him a text.
Yeah, a text. Let's see if we can get a get well soon thing going. Okay, let's see if we can find a fun
What are we doing?
GIF.
A GIF?
A
A
GIF?
GIF or GIF?
A GIF or a GIF? Okay, I see a lot of dogs. No surprise there.
Okay.
I see some kittens.
Oh, the kittens.
I guess we'll do some kittens in honor of kittens.
Yeah. And by the way, what's up, Patreon
Although,
people? Glad to
this
join
one's
you
pretty
today.
good.
I
I
know
think maybe this dancing get well soon is pretty cute.
that's solid. That's rock
Okay,
solid.
all right,
Yeah,
we're
that's
gonna
the
send
one.
that.
That's the one.
There it
And
goes.
and put from both of us. Just
And
put my name on it.
this is from both of us.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
that's
checks
good.
out.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's
We'll just have to see if that's actually what I typed.
Oh, JV, for the first time in what seems like years, probably months, I have this week's episode already in the can on Wednesday.
Ooh,
I
that's
have
gotta
been
feel good.
I have been still scrambling writing on Friday mornings for the last forever, it seems like, trying to get
Yeah.
this thing
Oh, I'm
done.
sure.
I
Okay.
sent that off to Kelly last night and was just like,
I wonder what it is.
oh, well, I'll tell you what it is.
Great.
It's the state's rebuttal.
Oh yeah, we knew that. Never
Yeah,
mind. You not no scoop here.
yeah,
No scoop
no
here. It
scoop.
is the state's rebuttal.
No
How
scoop for
long
the
is the
state's
rebuttal?
rebuttal.
How much time did he spend?
Well, that's the thing is I'll tell you Patreon people, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to tell the non-Patreon people. They'll be surprised on Sunday.
We love you,
Um,
patrons.
yeah, it was the perfect length for me to voice act it, just to read it.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's like
Okay.
I'm reading it as Aki, which is why
Okay.
I'm done early because I didn't have to write anything.
Got it.
Yeah, but so it's like
But it's also
23.
not anyone listening to anything other than you doing a thing. So it's not like they're listening to an interview with crackly sound.
Right, yeah.
It's a performance.
Yes, and it is. It was like 23 pages long, which came out to about 40 so minutes of, and I was like starting to break it down, and this is in the wake of the assholes um, on the fan page going, "You're biased. You don't present the state's case. You don't." So like all that was like rolling around in my head, and it shouldn't be,
Okay.
but like I'm just fucking over some of these people,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Well, here they say that I haven't presented the state's case." I'm going to not give you one opinion until the follow up. I'm going to read you
Okay.
exactly how the state says that Robert and Christian should be convicted.
Okay. Well, I don't know what you're going to do about the people who can't listen to the follow up because I laugh at my self deprecating jokes.
Right, right. And I will not be sticking up for you when that happens. I'm just
Thank
gonna yeah, let
you.
them know
Wouldn't want it any other way.
no apology necessary. Go ahead and shit all over Janet.
What a week.
Oh, it's been something.
What
I
a
am going to address at the
week.
top of the follow up another thread, the one that you luckily got out of the fan page before you had to got sucked into that one.
Okay.
But they like pulled their usual bullshit where it was like we came out with this new stuff, right? So we come
And
out
again,
with
shout out to any of you who are on Patreon
paying
who
to hear us shit on
are
you.
paying to hear Bob be angry.
Yeah,
I'm not shitting on you. Don't at me.
yeah. You can at me. You can at me. I think that you people need to get a fucking life, and it's incredibly sad the amount of time that you spend listening to and commenting on something you dislike so much.
Yeah.
Uh, so at me all day long, and
Great.
I will tell you to go fuck yourself. Uh, uh, Yeah, it's like, so we come up with this new stuff, which was, I mean, big shout out to, I think she's in here, but big shout out to Valeria for catching the lighter thing,
Yeah.
which was perfect timing too, because she just came across it, and then the next week I'm reading Moore's Closing, and he mentions the lighter. So had
Okay.
Valeria,
Oh, okay. So those things are connected, but not in the way we might have thought, which
right?
was, yeah,
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 and she hadn't seen the closing, so she didn't know what the closing arguments were. But had she not caught that the week before, I would have read that part where he's like, they grabbed this green lighter, and I'd have been like, what the fuck,
yeah,
lighter? And then
yeah.
I would have been searching again through the case file trying to find where the lighter came from. But
Oh,
because
wait, I guess we knew
Valeria,
that they couldn't be connected because her question came before we listened to it. Never mind.
yeah. But I mean, they
Never
are
mind.
connected in that way,
Yeah,
that so because she had brought that up, and so I had dug into it, and then I was reading the closing, and he's like, and they grabbed that green lighter. I'm like, I know what they're talking about. They're talking about
yeah.
that lighter that
Which I guess we
Valeria.
all did because we talked about it during the follow-up, right?
Mhm.
Because Valeria had very sagely seen that. Yeah, that's amazing that that worked out the way that it did so that you were teed up to have
Mhm.
already figured that out. Okay, so people were talking about the
So,
evidence that we discussed and saying
well,
like
no,
there's
of
a
course they
reason for this,
weren't.
it isn't
Why would they
suspicious.
do that? Why would they talk
Uh-huh.
about the new evidence? So this is
Okay.
how it goes. So then there's the lighter thing. So then I start really digging into like, well, what else did they find that I came across? Which to me, that hair is fucking bananas.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
like when I saw it, like first I read the report, and I'm like, they found a clump of hair, like who, but it like didn't say anything about it. And
Right.
so I'm just, I'm going through like, it could be I wonder if anybody caught in the episode, because I was writing it, of course, in real time as I do.
Right.
And at first I was like, I wish we knew more about this hair. It could be the victims, it could be Becky's, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
And then like I go down, which is these are the reasons why I'm still writing on Fridays, because then I'm like, well, I need to track this down. So now
Sure.
I'm in the case file trying to track it down.
Right.
Finally find the picture of it, and was like, well, it's not Becky's hair.
Yeah.
It's not
I need
John's
to pull that
hair.
picture back up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's black hair. Um, but I had already said in there, and I tried to like edit it in on the fly, like just to be like, it could be Becky's, or what if it wasn't Becky's? You know,
It's pretty smooth. As far as
when
I'm
I
concerned, that was a pretty smooth.
yeah,
You
when
did
I
it
wrote
smoothly.
this, I thought perhaps it is Becky's. By the time I
Uh-huh.
was reading it, I knew that it wasn't. Because,
Uh-huh.
um,
Would never have known. Would never have known.
yeah, so here we go. We got new information, new evidence out there to talk about. And
Yeah.
then the classic MO from that group is, well, let's try to distract the narrative somewhere else so that nobody's talking about this stuff. And so,
Yeah.
and of course, like they know, we know, I know everything that goes on in that group. I don't care to. People
Right.
share all this shit with me,
Right. Right.
and I don't really care. But in this instance, you see a thread where somebody's like, look at this, Christian lied in his interview about knowing that Becky was dead. And then they're all like,
God.
yeah, maybe they were on their way to maybe they were lying about going to church, or maybe this, or let's go on the other page and post this and see what they say. And they get all super excited to come over.
Yeah.
It's same as, remember a few weeks ago when somebody was like, Robert called back and said that he got home at 9:30, or went to the AM
Mm,
PM at 9:30. And then of course, they give you a screenshot
mm,
this big, and then you
yeah.
go look at it and read it. And what he actually said was, my cousin said he thinks I got home at 9:30, but I don't think I was there that early. Um,
Yeah, that's it's really hard to it's just really hard not to perceive that as a being about trying to get you
yeah.
than actually thinking that that's meaningful and that it
Yeah.
suggests guilt.
Well,
Like
it's
that's just
two
feels
things.
like
They're always trying to get me, but then
right.
also anytime there's anything that is significant to the case, their MO is always to try to derail the conversation to another place. And
Got it.
so this week it was like everybody's like, holy shit, like there's these other two, like, could be incredibly important. It could be nothing, but could be very important pieces of evidence that we didn't know existed. This is a huge deal. And so they're like, let's go back to Christian's interview that we've discussed ad nauseum over the last year,
Right.
and he lied and said that he didn't know Becky was dead. So, and I'll get into this in more detail when we're actually on the air, but they take a screenshot of this transcript where they say, "You know Becky's dead, right?" And he says, "No." The transcript reads, no, Robert had, last I heard, no, blah blah blah, and they cut that piece out, and they're like, earlier in the interview, Christian's dad said that he had read the paper, and that Christian told him that um that, oh yeah, we know that girl. That's Robert's ex-girlfriend. We were supposed to go up there, and his dad says they were supposed to go for a barbecue or something. Remember
Right.
that? But
Yes.
it was a
Mm-hmm.
hike. And so they put up, and it starts this whole long thread. So by the time I get word of it, first I'm sent, they're planning on coming over and trolling the group with this, and I'm like, oh, of course they are. And then I go look at it, and I'm like, I don't recall that at all. And there's this, I mean, hundreds of comments about Christian lying. Why would he lie and say he didn't know Becky was dead? So I pull up Christian's transcript, go to that page, and he says no. Robert had said, and then he starts kind of, puttering off, and then that's when Michaels is like, dude, I know you're nervous, but just relax, whatever. Yeah, yeah. And then he finishes his thought and says, um, last I'd heard from Robert, they hadn't identified any bodies yet. Like I had heard, and he said, well, what do you know? And he said, well, I know there were 3 people dead. He said there was 2 people that were burned up in the house, and there was another person that was dead, and he says a dumpster or something.
Right.
But last I had heard, the bodies hadn't been identified yet. Uh, so he very clearly says, yes, I know there's a fire. Yes, I know there was 3 people dead. All he was saying was, I didn't know you guys had ID'd the bodies yet, which had happened. His interview was the 28th. It was on the 27th when they put out in the paper that they had finally ID'd Becky's body.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, he obviously hadn't read the paper, or, his dad maybe was reading that paper and was like, do you see
Right.
this? Because his dad refers to it as the tragedy up there. Like, do
Right.
you know this? And he's like, because there was pictures of all 3 of them. And he's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, we know her. Robert knows her.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was like this typical thing, and it turned into this whole thing of Robert lying. And all it took was literally, instead of them screenshotting this much of the page, to read the next 6 lines. And they made it seem like he was denying that he had any idea anything had happened, that he didn't know Becky had died, when really all he said was, I didn't know you guys had positively ID'd the bodies yet. Uh,
Yeah. So it's okay. So it's not about like we've proven the state's case. It's just about like let's derail.
yeah. Yeah, that's all it is. And the funniest part about it is, so then one of the individuals in there, like I was engaged talking to them. I'm like, well, here's the rest of, like, this
Right.
is not what he said.
Right.
And then immediately turns into, to, oh, you have a bias. This is my favorite one. My entire investigation is bias because Kathleen Pape donated $4.99 in a super chat on one of our.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
So you're taking
no.
money from the defendants' families. I'm like, yep, that's right. I committed a year and a half of my life to this, put up with your bullshit for all this time, along with
Oh.
everybody else, spent all this time working on it in the hopes that at the end of the road, I will get $4.99 from Kathleen Pape. That was the
That
scam.
just hurts my heart.
Yeah, and it just sort of like every time you would confront them with and the funny part is they constantly accuse me of, cherry picking and only just doing this and that, when, like, literally everything I talk about, I put the entire document out there. Everybody can
Right.
read it. We talk about the whole thing. We talk about it in the follow-up. But every time they do it, that, like, the first example I gave, like, Robert called and said he was there at 9:30. This example, it's precisely what they do. Like,
Right.
take a screenshot
Right.
this big, put it out there, and say, look, they lied,
Yeah.
intentionally cropping out the rest of the response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I just don't yeah, I'm just trying to understand. I can't I keep doing that thing where like, I like a Shiloh and Scott thing of like I just want to understand why. And I guess I never will. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you tell me like this person is at former law enforcement. They worked on the West Memphis 3 case. They hate you because
Mhm.
you brought everything back out again and shit talk people who do a bad job. And now I have nothing else to do but spend a ton of time trying to make you look bad. I understand that. I understand that. Like
That
that's
would make
revenge. Like
sense.
that's revenge, and that's
Mhm.
a person who is I feel terrible for them because that cannot be a meaningful life. That can't feel like a meaningful life. And it must be that you don't have a meaningful enough life and enough joy in your life that that hate listening or that, proving you wrong becomes like the thing that keeps you going.
Yeah.
But if it's just a person who is like, I think Bob's arrogant or something, then I just don't like I can't I keep trying I keep wanting to understand. Like
So
I've never disliked any I don't there are so many people I don't like in the media and I just don't listen. I just don't listen. I just don't
right.
listen.
Right. Yeah, that makes a here's
I'm
my
just so
take as a
confused.
non, and not to be diagnosing anyone because I have no credentials to do that, but um I actually said this to one of the people, which I probably shouldn't, which is why, there's a bigger picture to what came out with that other post, because this is what was going on beforehand. This person, every time I presented facts and I was asking questions, I was like, "Can
Again,
you?"
shout out if you're on here. This is very surreal.
Yeah, I was
A
like,
surreal moment.
I was like, "Can you admit that what he was actually saying was he didn't know the body was, the body's read, and can you admit that you don't know if he read a paper, and can you can
Right.
you even admit those?" And then it was, you're biased, you're taking money, you're doing the, just like everything was a derailment and there's a reason for it. And I said, listen, I can't engage. And this is where I should have just shut it off, but I was like sucked in. And I was like, listen, like this is like textbook to me. It seems like that, like, this is an extreme form of narcissism. Like the narcissist cannot accept that someone came to a different conclusion to them.
Yeah.
So when you like break down what this person was, it was like, well, I've seen the evidence and I think this happened. And I say, well, I see the evidence and I think this happened. Well, there has to be a reason why you would possibly come to a different conclusion than me, because it's impossible for me to be wrong.
Right.
So the reason is your bias. The reason is you're taking money from the defendants. The reason is fill in the blank reason. There has to be a reason why you would ever possibly disagree with me, because the reason can't be that I might be wrong. That's not an
Right.
option.
Right. Right.
And this person didn't particularly care at all for me calling them a narcissist. Um,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, I didn't,
any more than you like being called biased because of 4.99, I guess. I mean, that sort of
no,
cuts both ways. But,
yeah,
well, I've never been more sure that there's at least one person who pays for the Patreon so that all of this can get reported back to the other group, because
yeah,
that's another representation of time that can be put in. Like, this is another hour that you can give to your day
right,
of talking about what a dickhead Bob is and possibly what an asshole I am.
yeah.
All I can say is, I'm not an asshole. You can think whatever you want. Bob's not an asshole, and I don't understand, and I just don't understand. I don't understand. So
Yeah.
I guess go into your group and talk about what a dumb blonde I am.
You know what? No one's come out with that one yet.
I'm sure this is the trigger. I'm sure it's like,
It could
oh, she
be,
doesn't want to be called a dumb
because
blonde.
that's what
Let
always gets me
me
about when
get
people like
my
will shit
typing
talk.
fingers ready.
Yeah, the thing always gets me about when people will shit talk you is like, not that dumb blonde is accurate at all, but you are at least blonde. Uh, but like it's always like it couldn't be more wrong. That it would be like, oh, Janet is, like she's an asshole, or she, like you're literally the sweetest person I've ever met in my entire
Mm,
life. Like you gotta do better than that.
yeah.
Call her a dumb blonde. Come on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's only half wrong if they call you a dumb blonde. And there it is. The truth came
Okay.
out. She's not a natural blonde.
Yeah, unfortunately I am. But not this exact blonde. That's true.
Yeah. Oh,
It's sort
that's
of a it's
well. See,
I'd say
there
it's
you
a little
go. Now
darker.
you're
A
being
little less
dishonest
red.
to the audience by presenting yourself with that hair color when, in fact, it's not that hair color.
That's right.
Do you
Well,
got
I'm
a
a
little red?
narcissist.
Do you got a little
Plain and
red in the
simple.
natural hair? I feel like you could be a bit of a redhead.
I'm definitely not.
Definitely
I
not a
I
ginger.
I wish I could say there was a pinch of ginger, zero ginger.
Uh,
I don't even have like, and I'm sure you'll understand because I'm sure you have friends who grow. In fact, does Zach grow a red beard? Like people whose
yeah.
beards get red
I
even though
tell
there's
him
no
he's
red
a
anywhere.
ginger all the
Yeah.
time, and
None,
he
I don't
insists
even
he's
have
not.
that in my family. Like none of the men in either side of my family grow a red beard. Like there's zero ginger, even though there's Irish descent.
I was gonna
But
say Barney, to me, I
yeah,
don't know, but Barney sounds Irish, is it?
it sounds like it should be, but I'm pretty sure it's French and the E and the A got switched.
Ah,
I think
that
it was
happens.
Vernet, and then and then those things got switched. But yeah, there's
Maybe I was
the
thinking
Irish
of
is on my
Blondie.
mom's side. My mom's maiden name is Malone, which is about
Oh,
as Irish as it gets.
yeah, yeah. Any
Um,
relation to Sam?
but yeah. From Cheers.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I guess it's possible. I mean, I could do some
Mhm.
genealogy
Do
and
some
see if
genealogy and
a
see
fake
if you're
TV show, yeah, see if a fake person shows
right, see if
up.
you're related to Sam Malone from Cheers,
Yeah.
or perhaps Woody.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. When I was in elementary school, I like many people that age, especially girls, but I don't want to like gender assign too much. But I definitely went through a vampire phase. We
Okay.
did not have Twilight back in the day. I
Right.
think
The
we did have
sparkly
Interview with a
vampires.
Vampire. I'm sure we
Yeah.
had, yeah, I'm sure we had
Oh yeah,
Anne
that
Rice.
was our gen.
Right, yeah. So I was, and just in general, like witchery and all that kind of stuff. When you're like,
Mhm.
ooh, the occult, how fun! This is like fifth grade, and then somehow I found in our school library some reference in like a history book about that kind of thing, that there was a Varney the vampire. And I was
Oh.
like, oh my God, Varney the Vampire. Amazing. Like, how sexy. This is so exciting. Varney the Vampire. It's going to be like the Vampire Lestat or whatever. And then I like turned the page and saw a picture, and it's just the most hideous, monstrous. I'm going to see if I can find a picture, because it is definitely not what you're hoping when you think that vampires are like, ooh, vampire. It's not good. It's not good.
Let's see here.
So, and I think it's vampire with a Y, not to brag, but
Barney the
okay,
vampire.
unfortunately, I accidentally pressed Barney the vampire.
Okay.
So what I immediately got
Well, that's
was
solid.
Barney the dinosaur. Not what I meant. Not what I meant.
Let's
Okay.
see.
All right. Yeah, we got some.
This is what I got here. Boom. This
Yeah, I think one of the small ones. Yeah, there you go. One of the small ones. That's like that's some sort of depiction of it. But I'm talking about this. Like, you're gonna want to grab one of the skull. See those
one of
black and
those
white
guys.
drawings?
Oh, this down
It's just
here.
like a
Okay.
skeleton. It's not good. I think he has a handlebar mustache. Uh, it's definitely not good. In
Let's see
fact,
here.
yeah.
Let me
I
just
mean, I guess I didn't know that there was a.
pop this
Go ahead and
dude up.
enjoy that.
Let me see here. We're gonna zing and we're gonna zong.
Oh boy,
Zing
they
and zong.
really don't want you to. Yeah, there
There
you
we
go.
go. So that's you. That's
Hot.
Barney.
Yeah,
Barney
hot.
the vampire. Yeah, sexy.
Not
Pixelated.
not what I was hoping for. Not what I was hoping for
But
at
imaginary.
all.
Do you know
Um,
what I did this morning?
what'd you do this morning? Go to the
I,
gym? Did
I
you take a
went to the gym.
shower?
Oh, no, but I showered Monday night. I had to after
Okay.
the
Okay.
yeah, after the live stream. And I did
Uh-huh.
like the thing. Like it was like 10 o'clock at night. I was going to bed and I was like, God damn it, I have to shower. And I was telling Becky that on the live stream that I was like joking, like, how long has it been since my last shower? And then when I started thinking about it, I'm like, oh my God, Janet said you showered before that interview on Tuesday. And I think that might have been the last time. So I showered,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna shower today because I have my son has a little partner has a band concert today.
Oh,
I'm gonna
cool.
put on some Real People clothes.
What
Uh,
is it like in the afternoon or at night?
uh, Evening. It's like 7 o'clock. Seven
Okay.
o'clock tonight. It's terrible. It's the worst.
What is he? Remind me what he plays, and what do you
He
know anything about
plays
the
the
music?
drums. Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's hard for a
yeah,
family.
yeah. So luckily for
Does he
us,
have drum
so
pads? He probably
yeah,
just has
oh
drum
yeah,
pads.
yeah.
Okay.
They've got
But
drum
it's not like a
pads.
full set of drums like my dad.
Yeah, no. Just he brings home like actually he brings home a xylophone and a plastic single drum pad. That's what he
Got it.
practices on.
Got it.
And also he doesn't bring it home or practice ever. Uh, so in these band concerts are
Great.
the fucking worst because now luckily he's in sixth grade, so this concert is the middle school and high school band. So at 7 o'clock comes the sixth grade band, and then they
Uh-huh.
clear off, and then the seventh and eighth grade band, and then they clear off, and then the
Okay.
high school band. I
Okay.
don't have Parker today. His
Oh,
mom
okay.
does. My ex
Okay.
has him, which means I can roll in at 6:45, stand there, watch them play for their 15 minutes, to which in the very, very back, I'll see Parker go pop, 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 or whatever he does. They're done. I'm out of there. Now, Alicia has to stay there for several hours because
Oh,
Parker can't
okay.
leave until the whole concert is over. So she
Got
will
it.
be sitting in that sweaty auditorium the
Got it.
entire time. Yeah, but
Oh,
they're not good. And
bless.
I'm hoping. I told Parker yesterday. I'm like, "Are you wanting to do band again next year?" And he's like, "Yeah,
You
yeah."
say, "Are
So
you wanting to do band next
yeah.
year?"
Well, here's the thing. So Quentin was in the band. Quentin was very like up through freshman year of high school. He was first chair trumpet. He was really into it. He was in the marching band and high like it was he loved it.
Yeah.
And then he just quit doing it, and which was upsetting to me because he gave me a reason to go to the high school football games on Fridays.
Uh-huh.
Um, because both of my boys are complete disappointments to me because I had planned for my entire life. As I live in a small town. It's the type
Yeah.
of small town where Friday night the whole town goes to the football
Mhm.
games and you watch your
Mhm.
kid. And I had two boys. And I'm like, I'm gonna be out there on Friday night watching my boys playing football, and neither of them play. Parker does some sports. Quentin runs like his legs are on backwards. He
Love it.
not an athlete at all.
My
So I
guy.
I had to accept that, and then but then he was in the marching band, and I'm like, well, this is cool. I'll still go and hang out with everybody. Yeah, my kid's
Yeah.
out there. Look, he's first chair on the old trumpet ski.
Uh-huh.
And he was doing like the funky things, like he was wearing a headband while he was out there, and like, look
Uh-huh.
at him having fun. And after his freshman year, he's like, I don't really care for band anymore. Yeah.
Oh.
So, but Parker is in the band. I may have mentioned earlier, has never, except for the first 2 weeks of school this year, brought his instrument home and practiced
Uh-huh.
with it.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't give a flying fuck about the band. And if that's the case, then stop putting me through this torture of
Uh-huh.
having to go sit at these band concerts. Like I didn't mind going with Quentin because he was like he loved it and he was
Yeah.
like into it and he was
Yeah.
practicing all the time and he had he
Yeah.
bought his own like little piccolo trumpets and other stuff so he could practice more at home. Like that was his
Cool.
thing. Like Parker's just in the band.
Got it.
Um, and right now he says he still wants to do it. So fuck me,
Maybe
Quentin.
it's a social like, yeah, it's not I mean, it sounds like it might just be social more than anything because he likes that group of people if it's but not doesn't care about the instrument and
It
stuff.
could be. It could also be that he's in band, so he doesn't have to take some other class that he doesn't want
Oh,
to take.
sure. Sure, 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 sure.
Band is easy.
Yeah.
But man, no, Quentin's about to graduate. This is like I'm having such like and he's finally
Does he
doing
know when his
stuff.
last school day is?
It's tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, he has
Uh-huh.
figured out that it is finally figured out that it's tomorrow.
Got it.
Um, but he drives me, and I don't think it's him. I think it's just like this generation of kids, but like they don't do the last semester of my senior year was one of like the most memorable fun times of my life. I don't know if yours like we did like senior skip day and senior
Yeah.
pranks and we
Yeah.
did like we all camped out at the park and creek by the school before the
Yeah.
last day of ski. Like we did all this stuff and like his school I may have talked about this on here. Did I talk about when they did their senior skip day last month?
I can't remember. Just mostly remember him not knowing when his last day was and what
Yeah.
they yeah.
So
But remind me.
he texts me and says, "Hey, uh, today," and of course, it's my son. So at 9 in
Uh-huh.
the morning, I get it because he doesn't go to school till 11 because he has some college classes.
Sure.
At 9 in the morning on the day of, he's like, "Hey, Dad, so I guess like today's senior skip day, so I'm gonna stay home. Is that cool?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? This is not. It's the beginning of April and it's
Yeah.
snowing. Why is this your? What are you
Yeah.
guys doing?"
Yeah.
Nothing. We're
We're
skipping. I'm like,
skipping.
that's not what senior skip day is. Senior
Yeah.
skip day is like in May when it's nice out, you all skip and go do something fun.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's not what we're doing. We're just staying. And truthfully, I
Who
thought he was.
decides that? Who
I don't
decides
know.
the informal thing that's not supposed to be a thing, but it happens anyway? That's
I
not
couldn't
like
tell
student
you.
council, is it?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. Like I remember, like my senior year, like people were
Yeah.
like, "Hey, senior skip day is gonna be next Friday. We're all gonna go to the beach.
Yeah.
We're gonna do,
Well, and
whatever."
mine's complicated because my dad was my honors English high school teacher
Oh
senior
yeah.
year. So I can't remember. I kind of feel like, and it was later in the day. I feel like it was like fifth period. And if I had to guess, I would say it seems plausible that my friends and I skipped most of our classes and then still came
Went to your dad's
back
class.
for
Yeah.
my dad's class. But
Yeah.
it's also possible that we had like the heart to heart where I was like, Dad, it's senior ditch day. We call it senior ditch day.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not gonna work. Are you gonna have class? Like,
Yeah.
but because it was an honors class and there were plenty of people who would not skip. I
Nerds.
have a strange suspicion because I remember what I did. I remember we went to this very cool like park and hung out and
Mhm.
like went on a little hike and just kind of talked and whatever. And so I know I did not go to all my classes on senior ditch day, but it's entirely possible that we were like, oh, gotta get back for class.
Right. Yeah. See,
Half rebel, half nerd.
right. And I'm just like, I want him to. I mean, he's a fucking straight A student. He's already going to college. He's got,
Yeah.
like, dude, go live some experiences. Like, go
Yeah.
do something. Like, I'm perfectly happy for him to do it. But I was
Yeah.
pissed off that that's what. And I was like, listen, if you're, because I don't believe that this is possibly what your class is doing for senior skip day, just
Yeah.
sleeping in on a snowy day.
Yeah.
So if you're not taking another senior skip day later. I totally would have let him take another senior skip day later. But I was like, if you want this to be it, he's like, Dad, no one's going to be there. And I'm like, whatever, fine. And that was it. That was their senior. Yeah, for us, I remember too. We all
That's a
went to the
bummer.
beach. We went
Yeah.
because people don't think of Michigan, think like beaches like the ocean,
I
but
don't.
Lake Michigan looks like the ocean except there's no
Yeah.
salt water. It's a huge
Yes.
sand dunes and huge giant lake. So we all went to the beach for the day and
Yeah.
just
But there's no waves, right? We can agree on that.
yeah. No, I mean, there are some waves and
Like if
undertow,
there's
but
a
not
boat
like you're
out
not gonna
there.
go surfing. People do surf,
Yeah.
but it's like
Do they
super
really?
fun. Huh?
I didn't know that. I didn't know you
Yeah,
could
they call
surf
it
in Lake Michigan.
third coast
Okay.
surfing, but it's
Uh-huh.
like
We could,
on a
but
bad
also
on a
there is more than 3 coasts already. Like the Gulf of Mexico is not the east or west coast.
we're the third coast. That's the south coast.
So
But
the
so if
fourth
what
coast.
happens is if we get a big winds coming out of the west
Oh,
because
sure. Okay,
because
winds.
the
Yeah,
lake
I
is
got you.
huge,
I gotcha.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
so that gives a lot of steam from
Got
Chicago
it.
to us to build up. But again, that might be 3 or 4 foot waves. You're not like
Right.
surfing like Hawaii.
Yeah. Have you watched oh God, what is it? 100-Foot Wave? Have you watched that HBO documentary? Have I brought this up before?
I have not.
It's pretty good. I only watched one episode of the second season, but the first season it's pretty good. Like I don't really care about surfing culture, but despite the fact that I'm surrounded by people who care about surf culture,
Uh-huh.
but this it's a story about a bunch of it's like there's kind of 3 main people, if I recall correctly, 3 or 4 main people that they kind of follow. One that they really follow, who's like one of the world's most famous surfers, who they all go down to Portugal, this small town in Portugal where these waves are just insane. And it truly is like you kind of can't believe what you're seeing. It's just one, and it's beautifully shot.
And that's like where there's like where they're like surfing underneath the big
Yeah,
hurdle
it's crazy. Like when you get the perspective, and also like the people that are shooting this stuff are also crazy because they're like on water ski, like jet skis, jet skis. But also, and of course it's also like, and one of the things that makes the wave so amazing is that they come and then they immediately smash into the side of this lighthouse and there's just rocks everywhere. So it's also massively dangerous in addition to just being dangerous because the waves are high.
Yeah.
But it's good. I recommend it. I
Huh.
recommend it. The first season, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like pretty captivating.
Sounds terrible.
You don't care.
No.
Well, you have the third coast, so you're not as
I've got the
interested
third
in
coast
surf
right here. I can
culture.
go see
You've got
4 foot waves anytime I want.
We call those boogie boarding waves.
Yeah.
You can't surf on
That's
that.
pretty much what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was their skip day, and then
What a
I get
bummer.
an email saying like the next week from the principal, emails everybody and says, "Hey, payment is due tomorrow for the senior trip." So and then I call Quentin.
Yeah.
Like, what is the senior trip?
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Oh, it's a Cubs game in Chicago." And
Oh, that sounds fun.
I'm like, "Did your mom already pay for it?" And he's like, "No, I'm not going." Like, why aren't you? What? Why aren't you going? It's like, nobody's really going. I don't like baseball. I'm like, it doesn't fucking matter if you like
Yeah.
baseball.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, but like nobody wants to go because nobody likes baseball, and that won't be fun. I'm like, you idiots. What makes it fun is that all of your friends on a day when you're supposed to be at school
Right.
are going to go to Chicago to Wrigley Field, which is a blast whether you like baseball or not.
Yeah.
And you're going to eat hot dogs and somebody's
Yeah.
going to sneak some beers and you're going to have a blast.
Yeah.
But no, they didn't. And literally like
But
half
he's
the class,
isn't he kind of emo? Like, I don't know if I would have gone to a sports game, even if it was like an excuse to get out of school.
he's definitely not emo. He's goodwill, really, is kind of,
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean? Like at a glance
Yeah.
you might think
Uh-huh.
he is, but he's not. Like he loves to buy ill-fitting clothes from Goodwill and not cut his hair.
Totally was me.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot tell you how many pairs of like wool size 40 waist old men's
Yeah.
trousers I was somehow belting together to like make a shitty outfit when I was in high
Well, that
school.
was the 90s. We were all doing that.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. But he's
No
still
one's
doing it. But the
doing
90s are back, baby. Oh, the 90s are back.
Yeah, but see
Don't you
what he's
worry.
doing, he's not like going to like he's not that.
It's not style. It's not a style thing. It's just
No, like he stopped in here yesterday and comes walking in and he's wearing a pair of FUBU jeans from 2010
uh-huh.
that are gray and are 3 sizes too big for him.
Uh-huh.
Like there's no world where that's nobody's like, yeah,
I
yeah, man,
love
I'm
him.
rocking the 2010 FUBUs.
Yeah.
Like at least in our part of the country, that whole brand was really aimed much more towards the African American community here. You
Yeah, a
never
little more
saw
hip
what
hop, yeah.
yeah, you didn't see a bunch of white guys, and he's like a white nerd wearing FUBU pants that nobody wears anymore. Because don't even. I love my kid.
I'm into it. I'm into it.
Oh
I think he's my people. I'm
yeah.
into it.
Oh, you will love
I
him.
mean, I know, I even just from sending the chorus stuff, like, it feels like
Listen,
I got his number a little bit, but
this
I'm
may be
wrong about
short
everything I've
notice.
said today.
This could be short notice, but
Uh-huh.
his grad party's here next Sunday. If you and Brandon want
No,
to,
right?
uh,
Let me get over there. Not this upcoming Sunday, but the Sunday after that.
yeah, the 28th.
Yeah.
Yeah, Memorial Day
I'll be in
weekend.
Atlanta.
Nobody's got
I'll
anything
be
to do
in Atlanta.
except for a
Yeah.
con of some sort in Atlanta.
Except for an anime con. So,
I don't know
which
what that means.
it's anime, just
Uh,
but it's like th- because almost all anime is Japanese, and Korra is sort of inspired by that.
okay.
Whenever I do a con like that, it's a real mixed bag because there will be a ton of people who are hardcore into like legit Japanese anime, and then they will snub and understandably so. I'm always surprised when we get invited. They'll be like, oh, this is like American, this is an American show. Like, I don't
Hmm.
get out of my way. I need to go see the Dragon Ball Z guys.
Yeah.
So, and there's also like a lot of the cosplay I don't recognize necessarily because if you get into anime, like it goes so deep. You could never watch anything else again and still be in front of the television 12 hours a day for the rest of your life and you would never have seen all of the
The
anime that's
end
out
of
there.
the
It's
anime.
just
Yeah.
a dense world. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, what I am going to do is I'm going to send you an invitation so that you may feel obligated to send him a graduation card.
Then that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to send it, but I want you to feel obligated to send it.
Okay, good.
That's what
No,
I mean.
I'll make sure to feel obligated. And wait, so are he and his girlfriend still together?
No.
I remember I thought they broke up, but then I couldn't remember.
Yeah. No,
'Cause I
they
remember
were.
he snuck out of his house. Like I was trying to remember the
Oh, well,
timing
there's
of
been all
like the
kinds of
sneak
stuff since
out and
then.
the okay.
So that was
And I'm
Zoe
sure
1.
he would want us to be talking about
Yeah,
this.
absolutely. That was Zoe 1.
Oh
They
no.
split up, and
Oh,
then he
okay.
started dating another Zoe 2.
hmm Which
And
that Zoe 2 definitely wanted to be known as Zoe 2. That probably made her
yeah,
feel
she
really
very
special.
much appreciated that.
Yeah.
And that one didn't end so great. He missed a few red flags along the way,
Uh-huh.
and anyway, that's over now.
Okay.
And then oh, no, just in case, I better not say what I was about
Okay.
to
All right.
say
Let's not.
because he's kind of sweet on a girl now.
Oh yeah, we're not gonna. Yeah.
No.
No.
And I'm enjoying the process. He actually sent me a text yesterday about it.
Oh.
He's never dated anyone from his school.
Yeah.
That's just like apparently not a thing people do.
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
but back to all the senior stuff. Like so, none of them went to the skip day. Was a sleeping in one morning. The senior trip he didn't go to. Like none of his buddies went to. But he texted me last night and said so. Um, Tomorrow's the seniors' last day of school,
hmm
and so tonight they're actually doing what we did in the '90s. So next to Buchanan High School, it's called McCoy Creek Park, but as you can
Love it.
imagine, there's a creek, McCoy
Yeah.
Creek, that runs through it, but it's just like a public park, and we all like pitched tents in our last night before our last day of school. We all camped down there,
Oh, that's cool.
and had a good time. And he texted me yesterday, and he's like, "We're doing a camp out in McCoy Creek Park. Like the whole class is doing it.
Oh,
Do we have a tent
cool.
and a sleeping bag and stuff that I could borrow?" that I could use to do it. And
And
so
you're
it's
like, Yes, I do, but don't touch any of my good gear."
oh yeah, he said, "Do you have a tent?" And of course I have a tent. And then he said, "Mom says she had," because he's staying with his mom this week. He said, "Mom says she has a sleeping bag, but I know that you probably have a better sleeping bag."
Uh-huh.
And I said,
Yeah.
"I do, and you are not touching it. I have a sleeping bag." And he's like arguing. First of
Yeah.
all, it's 76 degrees.
Okay.
You know, and I was like, if you think I'm giving
Yeah.
your dumbass my $300 down packable mummy bag that I take
Uh-huh.
into the mountains with me that's
Mhm.
rated for 30 below zero, you're out of your
Yeah.
mind. He's like,
Yes.
but please, everyone will be so jealous. No, you can have the
Yeah.
Coleman sleeping bag that's in the basement. You can have that
Yeah.
one.
You can have your old Star Wars sleeping bag that
Oh, that would be
yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about now. I'm more excited about it. Like it's not that I like want to live vicariously through him, but like I want my kids to have the experiences that I had. Like that
Sure.
was seriously one of the most memorable, happy like that week,
Yeah.
and like between then and graduation, everything was just so much like everything we did, and like my class was so close, and we spent so much time because it's a small school. My graduating class was 69 students,
Okay.
and we were very Becky and I have talked about this, like because she also went for a different school up the road, but small. But their school is very clicky, and ours wasn't. It's always our town has always
Oh,
kind of been
that's
like
nice.
this. Like there was
It's really
definitely
nice.
like the jocks, and there was definitely like kind of the gearhead groups, and but like we all hung out together. Like I remember like that camping trip, like we were all like people you wouldn't expect to fit together. Everybody, we
Mhm.
were just all super tight and hung out. So I'm like, I can't wait for he's coming home after he gets off school at 1:30, and I'm going to show him how to set up the tent
Okay.
and make fun of him. Super excited for my kid to go for his.
And how far away is the school? I remember kind of because I remember that he got that flat and then parked it in the school parking lot and then
Yes. Yeah. After driving on the rim for 10
after
minutes,
driving
destroying
because
said
part
rim.
of me is like kind of wants to place a bet that he comes home before the end of the night.
Like he's scared of the dark.
I don't know. It doesn't have to be that. But now that I know that Parker at some one point was just like, I'm leaving from Zach's house, now I feel like, because wasn't that Parker who
Yeah.
like disappeared? So now I
Yeah.
have this idea that your children are like, I guess I'm done. And then and
Yeah.
then he would just pack up at like three
Well,
in the
well, no,
morning
that
and come
was
home.
it was the other way around. So I was reading a text as you were saying it was Maddox that left our house to go home.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Parker
All right.
Parker would be perfectly fine anywhere. Parker rarely knows where he's at. He's just happy to be here. Wherever he is, he's just
Great.
happy to be there.
Cheers to that.
Yep.
Cheers to that. Okay, so so I got a light $1 bet that Quentin doesn't actually stay there the entire night.
I will if that happens,
Uh-huh.
it will be because he's gone to someone else's house
Mhm.
to have sex or smoke pot. It would be
Okay. All right.
one of those two. Not that
Okay.
not that my child does either one of those things,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but I can rule out drinking because he doesn't like flavor, so he wouldn't drink. Um, like two of my kids I've never had to worry about drinking with. One
Yeah.
of them is a hypochondriac and is very much he has like a literal phobia of vomiting.
Is this Quentin?
No,
No.
no, that's my oldest stepson. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
like he's not touching anything that he thinks might make him sick.
Got
So
it.
safe there with
A lot
him.
of people have that. A lot of people in my
Yeah,
life have had that. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
and
afraid to throw up. Yeah, yeah.
Quentin, we never have to worry about because Quentin won't drink lemonade
Uh-huh.
if it's the wrong brand.
Got it.
And it's I've been arguing with this child for 18 years and trying to explain to him that something not tasting precisely the way you want it to
Right.
does not make it inedible.
Right.
For
Yes.
example, say spaghetti.
Uh-huh.
It must be
The crowd pleaser.
Mueller spaghetti
Okay.
and Prego traditional sauce
I
with
see.
no meat in it. If
Uh-huh.
you throw in some ragu,
Yeah.
out. And I don't
Okay.
mean like, oh, that's not that good. It'll be like, oh no, won't eat it. We'll go hungry. Same thing. One of his favorite drinks, lemonade, country
Yeah.
time lemonade, country time
Okay.
lemonade.
Okay.
You buy some Tropicana lemonade.
Yeah.
He'll literally will take a sip and be like, oh God, no, no, no way that kid's drinking a beer. Not
Okay,
happening. Yep.
great, got it. Okay, what about and Michigan is all are all forms of marijuana illegal? I forget
All
where
forms of marijuana are legal,
legal. Okay,
but you have to be 21.
got it. But
Yeah.
it's easy to get because it's legal. So
Yeah.
that's and
It's
are they
everywhere.
just smoking pot? They're not like eating edibles and stuff. They're just going old school and like rolling a joint or what?
Yeah. I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
I don't even know if Quentin
Well,
would or
does he
does.
ever?
All I
I was
know
gonna
is he
say
won't
you. I mean,
drink.
if he's ever smoked pot, you probably smell it on his clothes. So,
Yeah.
but
I would imagine it would be vapes or edible.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't give. Maybe I'm a bad dad. I don't give a shit.
Mhm.
Uh,
But wait,
like
do
there's
you
worse
guys? But
things in
you
the
guys do?
world.
No, you don't like pot. Is that where
No.
we are? Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. No, I've never had like my experiences in smoking, eating whatever pot in my entire life have
Yeah.
either been really bad or not so bad. Like the
Right.
best
Yeah.
experience for
Right.
me was a not so bad experience.
Right.
I've
Right.
never had that euphoric like where people are just like, I love like
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna vomit. That's all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I need to go to sleep before I do vomit. That's
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
a
But
good
was that
pot for me.
and is that anything recently, or is that like
I haven't
old
had any.
school smoking pot, or like eating a brownie or something? Which I cannot believe we
I
did
mean,
that.
I can break down my experiences.
Okay.
In college, I tried it for the very first time because a lot of people went to the University of Colorado at Boulder, where I
Yeah.
went,
Yes.
because of the pot that was in
Oh
Boulder.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So lots of it was everywhere. I was in the Air Force. I had an Air Force scholarship, so like I was just, like that was not that I ever really wanted to, but I was
Right.
like, I can't touch
You
that
can't
stuff.
fuck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when I got out of that, it was like that week, like one of my buddies was rolling up a joint, and I was like, "Let me hit that thing. Let me get in.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be one of the cool kids." And I
Yeah.
shared a joint with them, and then I had to go tutor someone in calculus
Oh. Oh.
directly after.
Oh no.
And I
No.
still
No. No.
remember the young lady's name was Marianne, and
Uh-huh.
she walked into the room we were in where we were going to study, and said, "What the fuck, Bob?" Because my eyes were pure red and puffy. And I don't remember how far we got. Wasn't far until I felt like all the moisture in my entire body had been sucked out of me. I grabbed a trash can and did what could only be described as opening my mouth and then defecating out of my mouth. It was not liquid vomit at all. It was just
Okay, so that's number
that was
one.
numero uno.
So winner. So far,
Uh,
we got a winner.
Couple months later, one of my good buddies, I was hanging out in his room, and they were always chiefing it up, as they say, as the kids say.
Okay.
And he had a big 3-foot bong, and I was always fucking with his bong because
Yeah.
with nothing in it, I would be like, "Brrr." I'm like, oh, this is such a
Idiot.
cool fucking right, yeah. And one day he said, if you're gonna fuck with it, let's load it up. And I was like, man, I'm cool. I'm not in the Air Force. I can do whatever. Yeah, fuck it. Let's load that shit up. And I took what could only be
No.
described as the biggest,
Yeah.
strongest
No.
hit. Like he was
No.
mad at
No.
me for bogarting it
Oh
because
God. No.
I'd been watching
Oh.
them do it for
Yeah.
years. So I was like
Uh-huh.
until it was just completely
Jesus.
full, and then pulled the little thing out the end, and
Oh God. Oh God.
and I sat
Oh
there. I can remember to
God.
this day I was wearing a ball cap, and the
Oh
reason I remember
God.
that is because him, another friend of ours, were sitting over there on that bed, and I was sitting on this bed, and I remember just watching the bill of my hat start to go over, and then grabbing the trash can, and I remember just like the bill of my hat
Oh
and their feet
God.
running out of the room
Yeah.
as I opened my mouth and did what could only be described as defecated out of my mouth, because somehow again every ounce of moisture had been removed from my body somehow.
I'm starting to wonder about the quality of the marijuana in Boulder, but that can't be.
Yeah, all they said it
People
was the
knew what they
best of
were
the
doing.
best. I think it was too
Yeah.
strong,
It
is
was
what
too
it was.
strong. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
too strong.
And then I never touched the shit
Oh.
again until I was out of the fire department. When I left the fire department and started doing this full time,
Yeah.
um, I had my baby brother who really likes
Oh, yeah.
the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I had already had stopped. Becky and I had stopped out at a party where it was like all his friends. It was like not
Yeah.
even at his house. It was like a friend of his who's a mutual friend of ours was
Yeah.
having a party, and he's like, "Why don't you and Becky stop out?" So we stopped out. So they're like, I know Ray and Becky, and I know Brent and Allie, and I don't know anyone else that's there.
Yeah.
Big crowd, and it's just like this is like a Michigan party, right? Like we're in a barn. There's a
Uh-huh.
bonfire,
Yeah.
and he's like, brother, you got to get high with me. You've
Uh-huh.
never gotten high with me.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I don't know. He's like, dude, you're not in the fire department anymore.
Uh-huh.
Like, just get high with me. I'm
Yeah.
like, we'll see. Maybe about then, some guy comes up to, and he's like, dude, check out my keef. They call it keef, right? You know
Uh-huh.
what that is? It's like
Yeah.
it's the dust. It's like the
Oh, no, I maybe I don't know this.
apparently the strongest part of the pod, like the dust that
Oh,
comes off
no.
of it. Yeah, yeah.
No.
And he was like, this stuff is anyway, we're all standing
What do
around.
you mean the dust that comes off of it?
You know, the little hairs, the little
Okay.
crystals. It's like the
Okay.
crystals that
Okay.
crystallize on the outside of the flower.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so he had come up and mentioned that, and we're all standing in this circle. And then a few minutes later, that dude came up to our group that are all standing there in a circle and
Yeah.
did this. He's like, because there's fucking kids around, so he's like,
Right. Uh-huh.
and I said, "Oh no, thank you."
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And Becky's like, "Cool, let's go," and starts walking. I'm like, "Oh, well, fuck me, I guess we're doing this."
Uh-huh.
I've never seen her smoke pot. I mean, she has in the past, but
Yeah.
this is interesting that we're in a
Uh-huh.
place full of strangers, and we're gonna go out and go out
Uh-huh.
behind the barn. And there's already a group gathered back there, and
Uh-huh.
a nice big circle, and they have two or three of one might call a blunt. There were some
Uh-huh.
blunts that were, and then oh boy, with the real good keef, he had that and like a one hitter thing, and there was like this big circle, and
Oof.
they light the one hitter with the keef in it, and they give and he hits it. My brother hits it, hands it to me, and I'm like, all right, I fucking guess, and I like hit it, and then I hand it to Becky, and she goes, "Oh no, thank you."
Oh, that's right. You told this story. As soon as you said she said no, thank you. I now remember this story.
I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh no, I'm not touching that shit."
I forgot how much I love this story. How could I forget this story?
I'm like, "What the fuck is happening?" And then they handed me a blunt. They were like passing everything around, and they handed me a blunt, and I'm like, "What? I hit that?" And she's like, "I'm not." I mean, what do you mean? You're the reason we're fucking back here. And then they like started to hand me another one, and I hit that, and this happens like this, like one, two, three
Oh
hits,
God,
and then
yeah.
they started handing me and I was like,
Oh
that
God.
seems like
Oh
three hits,
no.
like I think that's
Yeah.
enough.
Oh
And I'm
no.
like, I get out because they're
No.
going, and then I start
Yeah.
walking back to the barn with Becky. I'm like, what in the actual fuck?
Yeah.
Like you're back there. She's like, I'm not smoking that shit. I'm like, you're the one. I said no, and you said let's go. And she goes, yeah, we were talking about his barn, and I wanted to see
Oh
the back of the
God.
barn.
Yeah.
I'm like, you thought this? You thought this meant see the back of the barn? And
Have
what
you told this
fucking
story on stage? It's a great story.
I should.
Yeah, you should. You
Yeah.
should.
And,
It's
and
a
and we're
great
running short
story.
on time, but ultimately I'm standing there, and I felt like the only way I could describe the sensation is if
Oof.
someone took molten steel and
Yeah.
poured it on because I felt like this like hot,
Yeah.
cold feeling that
Yeah.
started in my
Yep.
head and started
Yes.
washing down, and I'm like,
Yes.
oh
Oh God,
no.
no.
And then I remember my brother coming up to me, and it's like I'm seeing three of them, and he's looking at me like a doctor saying to me, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I might have got you too high to be in front of them, but
Oh
be around this
God,
many
oh
strangers.
God, oh God.
I'm like, you think?
Oh
And then I
God.
like went out into the yard because like I didn't know
Oh,
what it was. One of the peas. I had to do something. I was like, I have to pee, puke,
puke.
poop, pass out. I don't know. It's one
Yeah.
of the like
Yeah.
something's, and I was just like,
Yeah.
I, and then I just
Oh
came back. I'm
God.
like,
Oh God.
Becky, take me home. Please
Oh,
take me home.
yeah.
And then she drove me home. I didn't puke that night though, but
Okay.
I avoided it. But yeah,
Ugh. Yeah. I've had versions of that experience. Although I don't think pot's ever made me thrown up, but but like I have definitely had bad pot experiences, and so I didn't do it forever until literally like 3 or 4 years ago. I
uh,
started to use CBD,
uh,
and it took me a long time to even work up the courage to do that because I was afraid like it's still going to get me high. I know everyone says it won't,
yeah,
but so now the next time we're hanging out, I'm going to give you a nibble of a gummy because what is going to happen is you're going to have the experience I have, which is this. I don't really feel anything. Success. Like,
Oh, I skipped
like
one.
I kind of feel like eating a gummy, and I mean a bite of a gummy, which everyone else laughs at because it's like you really won't feel anything. That's how little amount there is of THC in these gummies.
Yeah.
Because I get like the lowest amount of gummy. Literally all you feel like all I feel is I feel completely normal. I just feel a little bit like the tiniest bit like maybe I'll giggle more quickly,
Yeah.
maybe. Or like I'll just be like, I do feel like going to the beach, or like, you know what I mean. But like, there's no sense at all of highness. There's nothing
Yeah.
about that feeling that cold. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's literally just a feeling of like I'm in a decent mood. Like that's all you feel. And I'm like, this is fun. This is fun, you guys. I do
I'm
pot.
really enjoying
I
this.
do
I'm a
pot, you
big pot
guys.
smoker here. Big potter. I'm a potter.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually
And the gummies are very good.
yeah,
Those
I
taste good.
have tried I've had two experiences with gummy, and
Yeah,
those actually were good.
you
When we
didn't.
were
Yeah.
in like
Okay, so
2016, Becky and I went to Colorado and we stopped at a dispensary
yeah.
and
See.
got some gummies that were 10
Yeah.
milligram, and neither of us
Okay,
had
yeah.
touched pot
I
in
get 5 milligram ones
15
and then
years.
I don't eat the whole thing.
Yeah, these were 10, and we each ate one, and then we went to breakfast, and then we were going to be like hours later. We were going to drive up to like Have you been to Colorado? You know, like Estes Park or
Oh
Rocky
yeah.
Mountain?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna make
Estes
it.
Park is where the Shining Hotel is, right?
Could be possibly.
I think
Don't know.
so. There's a
Uh,
big hotel on
yes,
the
there is.
side
Was
of the
that the
mountain.
Shining?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a whole nother
That's the
story.
inspiration for it. That's not where they shot the movie, but
Oh,
that's
okay.
the like Stephen King wrote The Shining as inspired by that hotel.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, so we were going to drive up to Estes Park. Becky already, by the way, you might imagine, not great on mountain roads.
Yeah.
Gets a little freaked out.
Sure, fair
And so
enough.
we were going to drive up Estes Park and then continue on to Steamboat Springs, where we were going to
Yep.
spend a couple days.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like after like an hour, and we went and had breakfast, and then we were like getting ready to leave. And then I was like, I mean, I was like, I think I'm feeling a little something. And I look
Yeah.
over her and she goes, "You fucking think?" Mind you, my wife's half the size of me, literally.
That's yeah, eating the same amount. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she like
Yeah.
calls her friend and she's like, "What the fuck?" She's like, I can barely move." And she's like, "Oh, just go back to the
Depends. Yeah.
hotel and have sex." And she's like, "Sex, bitch, I can't walk." Like I'm trying to like so then it had polar opposite effects on both of us. For me, everything was hilarious. That is the one
Yeah.
good experience
Yes.
I had.
Yes.
Like I didn't
Mhm.
feel like I guess probably I shouldn't have driven. I didn't know. But like I didn't feel like days or but
Yeah.
everything was fucking hilarious. For
Yes.
her, she took her already paranoid self and made it
Mm-mm.
hyper paranoid,
Mhm.
which is a terrible fucking combination when you're driving up
Mountain
mountain roads
passes. Ooh,
because
yeah,
she's
that's the
like,
stuff
"Oh
of
my god,
nightmares.
oh my god, oh my god," and I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
Yeah.
she did not appreciate at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, this is good to know. Okay. So, and then you said you did you had one other
I
gummy?
did gummies again. It was just from the same batch, like 2 years later, because it just
Yeah,
sat in our nightstand for all
yeah.
those years. A big
Oh, so you
group
got
of
like a little, yeah, you got like a
it was like
little
a
tin
thing
or
of it.
whatever. Yeah.
A group of us were up at our cabin,
Yes.
up north. It was just kind of an adults weekend at the cabin, and we like all woke up one morning, like on a Saturday morning, and we had this thing up there, and we're like if there's ever a time to do like we have nothing to
Sure.
do, we're
Yeah.
just chilling.
Yeah.
Let's all pop one of these.
Okay.
And so like of course Becky didn't, but me and several of us all popped one, and I got the couch locked,
Uh-huh.
but again, that was a good experience. Like
Yeah.
it was like there was a couple people that were coming late. I think Zach and Michelle were coming late.
Okay.
And they like showed up and like we're all just like what's happening? Like everything was hilarious. But none of us could move. We were just like nobody comes out to greet us. We're like, "What's up?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
I
know,
believe Zach
yeah.
said, "Are you guys all fucking high?" I'm like, yeah. Yeah.
He spotted it quick. I know it's 9. Side note, you know what would be fun is I wish we could go to what is it, podcast movement? I was emailing with Toby Ball and he's saying he's going, I think it's in August, but it's in Denver. And I was like, oh man, I'm always
That'll be
looking for a
fun.
reason to go to Denver. I have not been to
Yeah.
Colorado in so long.
I'm going in October to Steamboat Springs for my
Oh yeah?
hunting trip.
Oh, that's fun. I
Mhm.
actually, you know, it's funny. I am going to go to Colorado Springs for a con. Um, I can't remember when that is, but yeah, I was like, oh, an excuse to go to Denver would be really fun. It would be fun if like we had a windfall of cash and could both afford to take ourselves to meet at
Just go on a
Podcast
vacation
Movement.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, but just even just to go for Podcast Movement because it's a good
Yeah.
like podcast like hang out with fellow podcasters
Well, we should.
situation.
I was
But
just Becky and I were just talking about the other night on Monday night that like we need to get together with you and Brandon
yeah,
somewhere that's not work. Just go,
yes, no, I agree.
you know what I mean? Just go
Yes,
hang out somewhere
yeah,
and do
for
something.
sure, for
I think
sure.
you guys should come here
I'm open.
because
I'm totally open to it. As I've said, I do need to see where I'm going when the world ends. I absolutely need to see it. I
yeah.
want to go. I'm going to go and play with kittens. I mean, I would wish this were sooner than later because I could play with kittens and chicks.
Oh,
I
speaking of
mean,
chicks, I'm gonna pee real quick. We're gonna start this, but
yeah.
I hatched today my first ever. I just moved them to the brooder. 50 pheasant chicks, and
Okay.
holy shit, are they adorable!
They're extra cute.
They're bigger than obviously than the quail,
Uh huh.
but they're stripy. They're
Oh.
they're adorable. Maybe I'll bring one because I'm gonna go pee right
You might
now,
have to
and so
bring
maybe I'll bring one
one.
in. Give you a little peeky. Who's doing the
I
intro?
guess. I guess. I guess. I
You,
assumed that as soon as I
you.
saw that it was 8:59, I was like, oh, I guess. I guess I'll probably have to do the intro.
Yeah. Do you want to do like Zach? Like we'll hit record and I'll go pee and you'll do
Yeah.
the intro.
The
Is
question
that
is, will I have to pee when all said and done? But maybe I won't.
okay?
Um,
Well, you'll be able to pee when I'm
episode
setting up the live.
59.
So I'm gonna
Okay.
let's hit record.
All right. And it's episode 59.
59.
I don't know why. I still have 58 in
Moore's
here. But
closing. Episode
okay.
59. Moore's closing.
Okay. We are going to see what happens. I did not prepare this.
No, that's
And a
solid.
big hello to you, Kelly.
Yeah. Are you rolling now?
I'm rolling.
Let's clap.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. All
Oh,
right. I'm gonna go
solid.
tinkle. I'm gonna go take a
All right,
take a bath.
Kelly. Again, do not have a plan here. Did not think about this. Did not anticipate Zach not being here, even though I had full warning that he might not be here because he was feeling sick last night and we were texting. So I'm going to go ahead and do some hot improv and we're going to see how this goes. Oh, I can't imagine this is going to go well. Okay. First of all, let me just very gently and in a very ladylike manner burp. And done. Okay. All right. Ahoy, friends, and welcome to the Truth and Justice Friday follow-up for episode 59, Moore's Closing. We are without our dear and wonderful Zach today. He is a bit under the weather, so we are all wishing him well. And when we come back, Bob and I will be jumping into your questions about, again, Moore's Closing, Robert's attorney. We'll see what he brought to the table. I was doing so well. I tried to gild the lily. You know what I mean? I got all the way up until maybe you could use some of that. I got all the way up until I realized I had nothing left to add. And that's when you're in trouble. Kelly, that is when you come and you get yourself like your own boogeyman. So maybe I could just say, okay, and so we're going to take a quick break and then Bob and I will be back to answer your listener questions. Right? That's usable. Huh? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And when we come back, we'll see what Mr. Moore, Esquire, the lawyer of One Rubber Pape, had to say at the end of the trial. The trial.
You talking to
Also, I'm
yourself?
not allowed to.
I just
Oh,
real quick
yeah.
wanted to show you before I do the live stream. Look at that.
Oh my God, that's an adorable chick.
This is a pheasant
Oh, you're
chick.
so cute, pheasant chick. Those stripes are so cute. Wait, the stripes do kind of look like that one kitten that has a little horseshoe stripe. It's like
Yeah,
their
this is a Tommy.
family. Cute.
Yeah.
That
But
is
look
a
how
very cute. Look
adorable
at
they
how,
are.
and look how he's like, what's happening? What's happening? Where am I? What's happening to me? You're
He
so
is just 1 day old. I'm gonna put him
cute.
back in the brooder with his brothers
Oh,
and
that's
sisters.
so cute. Oh no,
So I
non-Patreon
I
people are going
opened
to
up
be
the incubator
very
today to
jealous.
pull them out. I'm like, oh, they're so
Oh, they're
cute.
so
Look at them.
cute. Yummy. Anyway, Kelly, where was I? So here's the situation. A lawyer, what a lawyer does. And then of course, like immediately in my head, I'm like, I hope everyone understands if anyone ever hears this, that this is deadly serious shit. I feel sick about what happened to Robert and Christian every fucking day. And for someone to think that me laughing or making fun of myself is somehow a reflection of not taking it seriously is the saddest, most incorrect thing I can imagine. I'm
Righty.
not calling anyone specific out, but I am calling
Alrighty.
someone specific. Hey, hey,
Did you
hey.
sing for the
I didn't. I just want everyone everyone to know that the thing I said was going to happen happened, which I guess everyone on Patreon will see, which is that I did amazingly well
uh,
until I realized I should have been done 2 seconds before I stopped talking, like, but I continued talking, and then it just
uh
derailed so quickly.
so
So
we have a
that went
nice
well.
little tight intro coming up on this one.
We had a tight I had a beautiful intro that absolutely could have ended, and then I continued on, and then I shit the bed, and then I proceeded to try and tie it back up with a cute little button,
Uh-huh.
hoping that Kelly can fix the mess that I made all over
She's a
her
professional.
audio.
She'll nail it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna click this too to let her know from here on out you can cut this. I mean, back to after Janet's debacle of an intro, you cut
Yeah.
that until
Yeah.
we start the show. Let me
I'm glad that
get
you
this.
used the word debacle and not another word that
Saw that
you
post, did you?
maybe shouldn't have.
I
Well, you
acknowledge.
usually you tag that, like, you feature, quote unquote, you feature the follow-up post so I don't have to scroll through to look for it, but
Oh,
you
I
didn't
didn't do
do
that.
that this time. So the only post that I did see was the one in which you apologize for these.
Oh, yeah, that was a
So
mistake.
that's what that was.
I don't know why I didn't feature the follow. I must have. I was just
I
busy. I was
think you
so
had a lot.
excited.
I think you had a lot going on. I think you had plenty going on.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, before I start the live stream, just for
Yes.
you and the patrons, I got offered that teaching job. I'm
I
pretty.
couldn't be less surprised. I guess I kind of already thought. I thought the interview was like a formality.
It seemed that way, but
Yeah.
they kept talking to me like I had it, but then they were like,
Yeah.
"We've got two other candidates we're interviewing." So I was like,
Hmm.
"Da, da," but they officially
Okay.
offered me that. So now I got to go into like contract negotiations to see how that works. Which is weird because I have like, would it be a dick move or a baller move to be like, I'm gonna have my agent contact you about contract negotiations?
Probably
Like,
a dick move.
yeah. Like I used to be very good at negotiating, but I
Yeah.
haven't done it myself in 8 years.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited about it. It's just gonna be part time,
Yeah.
so it'll be
What? How many
fun.
days a week? 2?
5 days a week, but just
Oh,
half
Jesus.
days.
Okay.
Half
All
days.
right. So we could say goodbye to True Crime Live.
Yeah, well, we'll see how things go over the. Maybe True Crime Live just
Sounds good.
making
Cool,
a
cool.
killing, but it's
Great.
the morning, so like I'll get done with work at like 8 or 9 in the morning your time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
Start the old live ski. Here we go. Booda, 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 boo, 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 doo, 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 doo.
Are you still working on it? I was like, why am I not seeing it?
Yeah, well, I thought I hit go live, but it didn't. Oh, there it goes. I think you should. I want you or someone. I know you don't like comedy, so but I feel like you'll appreciate it. I want someone, you by someone,
Uh-huh.
to watch the series finale, the 22-minute series finale of Two and a Half
Two and a
Men
half
for
men.
me.
It's true that
Just
you've been
like you
talking
don't have
about
to
it.
watch the whole series, just the series finale, because I want someone else to appreciate how clever that was, cleverly it was
Yeah.
put together.
All right.
So
You're going to have to text me about that because I'm not going to remember.
or do it.
Yeah.
Seems unlikely. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Bringing up the old live chat. Who's first in? Josh Beachy's first one in, followed by Danielle Townsend, Nick Bowen, Janet Barney's here. My
Yeah.
J Lo, as I like to call her. Brittany
Mm-hmm.
Walkinshaw, Danielle, Brian Blanchett, Sans Zach. Brian, we are Sans Zach
I just said
today.
I was kind of hoping he would pop in here because he's been known to. And if he doesn't have a voice, then
Oh,
yeah,
he
it doesn't make
may.
sense to record. But if he's resting, maybe he'll pop in.
Yeah, he may. He sound when I talked to him this morning, via text, it sounded like he actually wasn't feeling well too. It wasn't just the voice thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he may not. Because I asked him,
He
how's the
didn't.
voice, and he
It's true
said,
that he just said thank you to my text. It wasn't like,
yeah, he may be laying down. He told me he said like he's fucking over it. So Zach's got a weird spring summertime cold. Um, hope you're okay, buddy.
shh.
Oh, you jerk.
Oh, from
I just saw that when you literally worded to me when you sent the get well soon that you're saying this is from both of us. Uh, it actually says, and this is from just Janet. Jackass. Uh,
Yeah.
are we doing True Crime Live tomorrow?
Yeah.
What
In
time
the
is
morning.
good
Want to
for
do it in the
you?
morning?
Morning's good for me.
Yeah. I think that's what we said, but we didn't actually pick a time.
Yeah, you weren't sure.
Can you do like what? What
I was
time?
gonna say, like, do you want to do it like when we started this at like an 8 your time, or do you want to do it later than that?
Yeah, I can do it at 8. I
What?
prefer 9, but if that's bad for you, I can
No,
make it
it's
work at
not.
8.
Nine's perfect.
Okay.
Nine's fine.
Okay.
9 o'clock.
As this is
Uh,
what everyone comes here to see, you and me coordinating our schedules for
because
something
we only
semi-related
speak.
but not related.
Yeah, we only speak to each other
Yeah.
when we have an audience.
Uh-huh.
There's no sense
It's
of
not worth it otherwise.
yeah.
It's
Well,
not
we're
worth it.
doing
Hi,
all these lives now.
friends.
It seems like a lot to talk to you like a fifth time a week, you know,
I know.
just for shits and grins.
Yeah. And yet we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean
Uh-oh, Kathleen, are you sick
offline.
too? Billy says a lot of people have gotten those late spring colds. Hope
Mhm.
everyone's feeling okay.
That's
But
what
yeah, it's just
Zach
BJ,
got.
not BJZ. Brittany's cooking dinner. That always trips me up. I hope you have a wonderful dinner. All right.
I just had it actually had nothing to do with these people, but my brother had texted me about something
Oh
we're doing
no.
tomorrow and asked me what time. And I said, "Hang on, I have to ask my co-host and friend Janet Barney from television
Me.
what time we're going to be doing stuff." All right, what's going on in the chat here?
Well, what I want
Ah,
to tell you is that Teresa has some pretty breaking news, which I'm super excited about. I'm glad this is coming up. OMG, Bob, I'm having a flatbread type thing with red sauce, cheese, and pepperoni. I'm told it's called pizza.
could you please tell Teresa, because I'm not talking to Teresa.
I
So
see,
just
I
know
see, I
this. So
see.
this is me
Okay.
not speaking to Teresa.
Got
But
it.
if you wouldn't mind telling Teresa that I said to fuck off, if you could just pass that
Okay. I'm not going to
along
pass that along.
from
I'm
me,
not
tell her
going to
that I
pass that
said.
along.
Well, can you at least tell her that I'm not speaking to her? I would tell her myself,
Okay.
but
All right.
again, I'm.
Teresa, and I want to apologize because he's being such a child.
Don't you apologize for me? Don't you?
Unfortunately, by not speaking to Teresa, you've left the door wide open
Oh, I wish there was
for
something
me
I could
to
do about
interpret
this.
it however I want to.
I wish there was something I could
Too
do about
late.
this.
Too late. Oh, Brittany's from South Carolina in the States, but stationed in England for 3 years. When
Oh,
I was
what?
over there and I did the Comic Con in London, I met so many folks, Americans who were stationed in England, and it seemed pretty cool. It seemed like they were having a pretty good time.
I
So,
met
Brittany, I hope your
Idris Elba
experience
in
has been
England. We had
good.
a nice experience, the two of us.
Oh, you guys are tight.
Yeah, me and
You
Idris.
you coming into that situation as a massive fan.
Yeah, yep.
Oh, great story.
uh,
Great story. Teresa says she's not listening to you. So,
well, that's fine because I wasn't talking to her. What's Jay say? Did you guys see Jamie Snow's case on Georgetown's making an exact? I need to look. So we just talked about it in our live that
yeah, I watched
video.
that 8-minute video. It was great.
But was that part of Georgetown's thing, or like what else am I missing from it? And I feel terrible because Tammy Alexander had like in the middle of like 9,000 things happening at once, like a few weeks ago. Like I just remembered, sent me something about the Georgetown making exoneree, which is of course where Anand Sayed is working now,
Yeah.
and this thing about Jamie, and I like lost track of what it was somehow and lost track of the text. Um, so yeah, what is it a show? Is it a show? Is it a documentary? Is it the thing that I shared on True Crime Live? Do you know?
Well, I watched the video, but
Right.
I don't remember if it was associated explicitly with Georgetown's making the exoneree or if it was an independently made. I
Help us
mean,
out here, J
I
Lo.
watched it.
Google him.
Uh-oh, Dr.
So,
Shiloh's here.
what's up? What's up? Yeah. I was gonna to call you JV. I was gonna, but I couldn't. I couldn't pull the initials to use.
Uh-huh.
What's up, DS? I don't know. That's not good.
Okay, all right.
Let's not call her DS.
DS. Yeah. Well, actually, you should because they don't use their last names anyway, so it makes sense for you to make the initials DS.
Oh, right.
I'm very excited, and anyone who is in the LA area should consider this if they have the ability to do so. I'm going to the LA Not So Confidential live show this Saturday night,
Ooh.
which they are doing in conjunction with the LA Paranormal. I'm so sorry, Shiloh. I'm forgetting. It's because I'm such a huge fan of yours, but I know it's LA
Okay.
Meekly and then the LA Para Weirdle podcast. I'm so sorry. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Uh,
Ooh. Anyway,
yes.
anyway, you can I think there's still a handful of tickets left at best, but you should try to do it. It's at this really cool historic house air and like a little pocket of old historic homes in kind of the Eagle Rock area, and I'm so excited. It's going to be very cool.
That sounds awesome. I wish
Yeah.
I have no desire. And I do want to point out that that video that I shared. So for those of you that don't know, maybe somebody can throw the link in the chat here. But also, if you go to our True Crime Live episode, which is also here on YouTube from Monday, in the description, I have I put the link to that video. So that video
Oh,
was
okay.
that was
So
made by
is
the
maybe more like
undergrads.
okay. Thank you, Jennifer Lopez, who I'm refusing to call J Lo because Jennifer is her own person.
Oh, J Lo just speaking of J Lo, just text me
Great,
the
Grayson. Happy Saturday
link.
birthday. Holly Weird. I was so close, Shiloh. You know I was close. Holly Weird Paranormal. Yes, of course. What am I going to wear? Oh no, what am I going to wear? Do I need to wear a period piece? Shiloh, help, help. Do I need to wear a haunted petticoat?
I'm certain I don't know what a period piece means, but whatever I think it means is cannot be accurate.
I'm also positive that that's true. Although, shout out to the great film Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Saw it in the theater. Loved it.
Oh, Becky and I went. What a great movie.
Isn't it great?
Oh my
Oh,
god.
what a
It's
great
such a
movie.
feel good movie. So,
Yeah.
um Becky and I we wanted to do hadn't been to the theater for a while, and so we're like, let's do dinner and a movie. And she had been saying she wanted to go see that movie. Um and
Yeah.
I didn't know
Love
anything
it.
about it. That's a book like she read when she
Oh, yeah.
was
Judy Bloom. Mm-hmm.
yep, the Judy Bloom. Um, and she was saying that she had wanted to go see it, but her, she was trying to find one of her girlfriends to go with, whatever. And then the movie we were planning to go see, there weren't enough seats left because we didn't get tickets early enough, and we were like trying. I was like, "Well, I'll just take you to go see that." And she's like, "You don't want to go see that? It's a chick flick. You don't want to."
Yeah.
I was like, "I don't really care. I like going to the theater in general,
Yeah.
and you want to see it, so let's go see the thing that you want to see. It's fine." So like I had to talk her into going because she was so
Yeah.
convinced I wouldn't like it. Loved it.
I'm so glad to hear
Loved it
that.
so much. It was just
It's
such a
so good.
the
Isn't Rachel McAdams just like
amazing.
she's so wonderful.
And the best word I could use to describe it, correct me if you don't agree, but wholesome.
Yeah.
It was such a like just wholesome, happy, joyful. Like I loved every
Yeah.
minute. I think I cried a couple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, you know I cry. Come
Right. Yeah.
on.
Zach
Yeah.
cried from home. He didn't even see it.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Brian, for the Brian with a $2 super chat, wishing Zach to feel better, with a broken heart. Uh,
I know. Well, I keep meaning to say whenever I see Brian's name come up on here, I always want to do a really bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impression because Brandon's brother loves Arnold. He's autistic and he loves his two favorite like
mhm,
characters in the world are Ace Ventura and basically Arnold doing anything. So
solid.
whenever I see Brian's name, I always want to go Brian because I spend a lot of time
Yeah.
like calling his brother and going, Brian, what are you doing, Brian? Get in the chopper.
You should do more
So
voices.
thank you, Brian,
You
for
know,
the super chat.
what, from now on, whenever Brian super chats, you do this, and and anybody else that super chats, I think that should bring out your Viola character, which is one of my favorites.
Well, I do think this is a super group. So if the super chat is ignited by Viola, then Viola, we've made a little extra money to support the pod.
Pod. Don't care
Okay.
for Pod.
Yeah, Kathy Bates also amazing. I mean, everyone was just so good. Yeah, the kiddo was so great. Abby, I think her name is
Oh,
that
I'm so
actress.
happy went see it
That was
that we went to
wonderful.
see it in the theater because
Yeah.
it was just like I cannot remember like that same weekend we ended up going to see with my oldest stepson. He loves horror movies, so we went to
Yeah.
see like Evil Dead Rising.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The worst movie I've ever
Okay.
seen.
Good to
And I
know.
enjoy a nice horror movie, but
Good to know.
literally eye roll like really
Oh,
like this is terrible. And he
yeah.
was still I just kept whispering to him. I'm like, this is like the most
You wanted to
this
see this. Yeah.
yeah. How much longer till this is over? He's like, shut but it's terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, but that
Oh well.
movie was, yeah, it was just
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want it to end, and it was over. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
and like everybody in the theater, like you I couldn't see because it's dark, but you can hear everybody doing this. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. And the Judy Blume documentary that's out, it might be on Hulu or it might be on HBO Max. I can't remember, but there's also a great Judy Blume documentary right now
yeah,
that's about like all of her different books. And there's a bunch of kind of celebrities and authors and stuff who talk about like how much her books influenced them. It's great. She kept correspondence with kids like into their
really
adulthood. Yeah, people would write her and like they were keeping a journal and be like, "I can't tell anyone this, but I want to tell you, Judy." Oh, it's just another. It's like that movie feeling for
fantastic.
another hour and a half because
Did you take
it's
Brandon?
adorable. Yeah,
Did he enjoy it as well?
loved it.
Loved
Yeah,
it.
he loved it.
Yeah, and then I was mad at Becky for saying that it because she
That you
almost
wouldn't have liked
denied
it.
me for
Yeah,
telling me that I wouldn't like it because I'm a dude, because
yeah.
I'm a
This is a good lesson
rugged dude.
for everyone. Like now she knows maybe Bob will like this movie that I thought maybe he wouldn't want to go see, and then you guys will
Well,
go
she
see some more.
uses that excuse for things that are on Netflix that she wants to watch.
Oh, that she watches without you because she'd
Yeah,
rather just watch
especially
it
in the
right away.
summer
You
when
wouldn't
she's
like
not
this, yeah.
working, when she's
I get
home.
that.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
she'll just be like Parenthood. I've never seen Parenthood. Like I came in, and she's like
The
four
movie
seasons.
Parenthood? Like with
No, the series
the
Parenthood.
series. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and like I had said, like everybody saw like how amazing this series is. She's like, "Oh yeah, I watched it." I'm like, "Everybody, why didn't we watch it? Like we have things we have said it in the evenings. Like, oh, there's nothing to watch." It's like, "Oh, I didn't think you'd like it." I'm like, "Bullshit! You knew I'd like it. You knew it, but you didn't want to wait for me to watch it."
Yeah, you're onto her.
Uh, Bobby, maybe she didn't want you
I
to
shouldn't do
go
this.
because you smell. That's very possible. Although I think I did shower that night. Tight space, no shower. Everybody's coming in. True Crime Live. Yep.
Oh, it's on Amazon. Okay, so every one of my guesses was wrong. That Judy Blume documentary's on Amazon. Thank you, K.R. Fairfield. Um, okay, all right. You want to get
Nicole.
into this? I guess I realized it's, and I
Yeah,
was
but real
hoping.
quick, I want to because
Oh yeah,
finally somebody else
yeah.
saw it. Nicole said saw Fool's Paradise. We talked about that a little bit on the True Crime Live on Monday. I did too. My thing with it, Nicole, was that it wasn't what I was expecting. That it was like that's the one with the Charlie Day's movie.
Oh, the Charlie Day one, right?
Yeah. I went into it thinking that it was going to be slapstick comedy, Charlie Day style comedy, and that's not what it was. I appreciated the movie for what it was, which was a very artsy um satire and kind of a pretty smart look at like Hollywood and the people and stuff like that.
Right,
From the perspective of him, someone who works in the
right,
industry. Um, yeah, I was just I walked away just feeling like, that's not. But then later thought
right.
about it. I was like, well, it was the reason I didn't like it was because I thought it was this and it was
Yeah,
something completely different.
which isn't fair to the movie. Like
No,
I feel like that's happened to me so many times where I see a trailer and I'm like, "Oh, cool, you've set me up to see this type of movie." And then you see the movie that it really is and it's like,
yeah,
"Oh, that wasn't fair to anyone. It's not fair to the movie to misrepresent it. It's not fair to the audience to misrepresent it."
yeah.
Like,
And to
so
be
maybe that's what
fair,
happened.
I watched the Always Sunny podcast on the
Yeah.
Monday before where Charlie and Glenn and Rob all were like talking about the movie coming out, and
Yeah.
it was what he described, but my
Okay.
brain was still like,
Right. I
it's
love
Charlie
Charlie Day.
Day,
Yeah.
Charlie
Yeah.
Day,
I got
Ken
it.
Jeong. It's like it's gonna be hilarious. It wasn't hilarious.
I got it. I
Um,
got it.
I am on
Um,
the last episode of Jury Duty, Valerie, and we're gonna start this show. We'll
okay.
start the show.
You guys are so
Uh,
patient. So, but we should be getting all of this. We get all of this out when we do True Crime Live. We have no excuse for it being 9:25, and we haven't started yet. I
yeah,
apologize
that's
to
because we
everyone, one and all.
only speak to each other when we have an audience. The only time we ever talk. All right. I guess we'll
Okay.
start this thing. I have no idea what your intro was. Sounds like it was quite a debacle.
When Kelly works for Magic, it's going to be a nice, tight intro without a lot of
Be-
frills. But I
yeah.
did explain that we are songs, Zach.
Okay. And remember, I'm going to upfront talk a little bit about that thing we talked about,
Got it.
the post about Christian.
Okay.
All righty. And that might, you know what, that might draw out some folks that end up getting blocked from the chat because I'm
Oh
just in a
boy.
trigger happy mood. Here
Okay.
we go. All right, thanks everybody for joining us today. As I'm sure Janet mentioned in the intro, we are sans Zach today. He's not even on an assignment today. He is Zach's a little under the weather, doesn't have a voice and couldn't make it. But Janet and I are gonna push through in
Yeah.
today's episode of what show are we doing today?
This is Truth and Justice.
That's the one. Yeah, the Truth and Justice. Sorry, getting a little mixed up. Real quick before we get into the episode and all your questions, which we're going to do. I do want to address just out of transparency and mild irritation on my part. I do want to address something that was brought up on the fan page, as is typical when we come out with an episode that has some new evidence in it. There's a group of folks that try to derail the conversation away from that and to another direction. But of course, and I was accused of being biased and not presenting the state's case and all that. So I want to address it here. There was a group that got together on one page and then came over on our page to point out the fact that Christian. The claim was that Christian lied in his first interview because he claimed that he didn't know Becky was dead, and they had cropped out and screenshot a small portion of that interview where Michael says, well, he's talking about, why they're there. And he goes, Becky, you know, she's dead, right? And Christian says, no, Robert had, and then he kind of tails off. And then that's the part in the interview. You can go back and read the transcript, where Michael's telling him, like, I know this is nerve wracking, but calm down, do all that stuff. And so anyway, if you're on the fan page, you saw there's like this huge thread where everybody debating whether Christian did know that Becky was dead or not. And they pointed out that John, earlier in the interview before Christian was there, had said that that he had seen the tragedy, is the way he puts it, in the
Hmm.
paper, and Christian had told him that yeah, they know that girl, that's Robert's ex-girlfriend, and and that they had plans. His dad says that they had plans to go to a barbecue or something up there
Hmm.
that day. And so they said, with those things together, since the interview was on the 28th, on the 27th was the day that her body was finally identified, and then that was put out to the public. There's a newspaper article on the 27th that said that her body had been identified. Um, so putting those together, they said there's no way that that Robert or that Christian didn't know Becky was dead because his dad saw the paper. Now, granted, there was lots of newspaper articles over the course of those 10 days about the case. His dad said he had been out of town and he came back and was looking at the papers. We don't even know which paper he was looking at.
Hmm.
But of course, Becky and John and Vicky's pictures were in most of those articles. Um, but so the claim was made, and several people said that this is one of the reasons they think Christian is guilty, because why would he lie to them and say that he didn't know Becky was dead? I want to address that because what they didn't tell you, or what they cropped out of that page, was the rest of Christian's answer. After the calm down and everything, Christian says, Michael's asked, like, what do you know about it? And Christian says, I know there was a fire. I know there was 3 people dead. There were 2 people that were in the house, and then there was one body that was, he says, in a dumpster or something. Is what he says, and then he says what he had started to say earlier was, last I heard from Robert, they hadn't identified the body yet. That you guys didn't know who was there yet, but I'm guessing you know now.
Mm.
So that was the full context of that. So if you were to read that, you would see me saying, like, this is nothing. He didn't lie and say he didn't know Becky was dead. He didn't even say he didn't know Becky was dead. What he said was he knew 3 people had died.
Hmm.
He knew 2 were in the house. He knew 1 was outside, he thinks in a dumpster. Uh, and he thought that the body hadn't been identified yet. And then Michaels tells him, yes, it has been identified yet. So out of full transparency, because I don't want to be biased, I want to make sure to point out that I saw that, had the conversation, and if you want to read the transcript, go read Christian's transcript from September 28th. So when you see the claims that Christian lied and said he didn't know Becky was dead, what Christian actually said was that he knew there were people dead, didn't know that they had officially identified the body yet. So I just wanted to make sure to cover that before we move on to this episode, to make sure that we're covering everything.
Got it.
Because again, that was And I will, and we're gonna move on. But I will point out, I had conversations in that thread with people who claimed that my entire investigation has been biased because I haven't presented the case. I've asked them what have I not presented. Literally presented the entire prosecution's case. We've now, as of this coming Sunday, will have presented the entire trial, all the documents out there. At one point, I asked this specific person, what things do you want me to cover that you think I haven't covered that make them look guilty? We covered that. I've also invited anyone to come on and make the case for guilt. And so then I was told that because Robert's mom, Kathleen, one time in one of these chats, um, uh, did a super chat for $5 or $4.99 for us, which was really nice of Kathleen to do. And I was told that clearly that was my motivation for committing the last year and a half of my life to this case. Was all hoping that Kathleen would buy me a cup of coffee, which finally happened last week. So there's my bias. I'll stop being snarky. Just you only can listen to so much bullshit before you just got to call people out on their bullshit. And with that being said, Janet, what do you think about Moore's closing argument?
Uh, I I liked it. I'm interested. There were some folks who, and I sort of put this first in the follow-up order. There were some folks who, in the episode, you do say, and you said it, I think, in last week's follow-up, that you weren't necessarily a huge fan of
Hmm.
Moore's approach, but there was a lot of really interesting information in there.
Yeah.
Valeria very astutely had discovered just prior to you covering Moore's closing that the lighter had been found, was in evidence, at least was listed in evidence, along with some other stuff that you get into in this episode. But so there were some folks who walked away, like Keith and Liz and Alex, who kind of liked the closing and were maybe interested to hear a little bit more from you on why you had such a strong reaction to it in the
Yeah.
slightly more negative category.
Uh, to be clear, I don't have an issue at all with the entirety of Moore's closing. What I didn't care for was the presentation of the imaginary scenario, and the reason was really that's to me it's fair is fair. I've called out the state for creating scenarios that weren't supported by the evidence. Um, and so, and that's what Moore did in a couple of instances, right? So he tried to fit a scenario together that fit the evidence, but then he also filled in some, like Becky called Robert on Monday. Well, we don't know if Becky called Robert on Monday. We don't have he says from the home phone. And he said that specifically because we don't have the home phone records from that day, and we don't have Robert's records from that day. So there's no way to prove that happened. That was my only issue was that first segment where he gave the imaginary scenario. After that, I think he made some really good points. And truthfully, the part that I thought that was the most brilliant is probably a strong word, but it was a great strategy. Was the way he handled Jeremy Witt, rather than just saying like this guy's full of shit, don't listen to him, like he's not credible, he's not trustworthy. I think that more accurately picked up on the fact that no one probably believed Witt. And so he spends a lot of, and if you read I talked about it, but if you read the transcript, you'll see he spends a fair amount of time driving home the fact that Jeremy Witt is a linchpin of the state's case. So it's kind of a set him up and knock him down scenario where he's saying, listen, they have to have Jeremy Witt in order to have a case. If you don't believe Jeremy Witt, then they don't have a case. You have to, he's crucial to their case, and then moves on to say, and here's all the reasons why you can't believe Jeremy Witt.
Mm,
I thought that was well done. So yeah,
yeah.
the second half of his closing, I did like. I didn't like the first part. Um, that said, I think that I don't know if he had much of an option outside of that, um,
Well,
because
yeah.
the state presented a scenario, so like you have to present
Who's
a
got the best
counter
story?
scenario, and he was handcuffed by the fact that he couldn't name any alternate suspects
Yeah.
in his closing. So there wasn't a lot much more he would do. For me, I did like Dolan's approach better which was just really hammering away like these things are not proven. They're telling you things happened that aren't proven by the evidence.
Yeah, I again, just I mean, I know I just interrupted you and I apologize for that, but just the whole who tells the best story, we've talked about it so much on the podcast in general. And so I wasn't necessarily expecting a story to be told, a scenario to be given that could
Hmm.
help paint a picture that would at least pull focus off of the story that the state told. So I had mixed feelings about it because I felt like I would probably feel compelled to do the same thing. I mean, just because I do feel like we kind of have an understanding that, you can't just say they didn't prove their case, that people want to have a narrative. And so he did provide some kind of a narrative. The problem was that maybe it wasn't the best narrative. And like you said, he was also not able to say a lot of things that I'm sure could have
Yeah.
helped that. But I just want to really quickly shout out SL on the chat, because just to circle back very quickly to the idea of bias. We've had people and coming from the opposite direction. SL says, I know people were complaining on previous seasons for the emotional pulls on them. And so early on, you had kind of made a decision not to publish a bunch of stuff that could you could be accused of tugging at people's heartstrings.
Hmm.
And so now we're coming towards the end of the season, and in fact, there's a you could actually argue there's an absence of bias in that you haven't given the human beings
Yeah.
behind what's happened who are in prison the same kind of voice that maybe you have in past seasons. So just to kind of counterbalance the bias idea, there have also been folks who are like, I want to hear more about the guys. I want to know
Hmm.
them better now that we have talked about the evidence and the facts. And so I know there's been a lot of interest in that, and so SL brings that back up now.
Yeah, and that's coming. We're working on trying to do an interview um, with the guys, at least Robert. The two guys have two different legal teams that have two different views on how they should interact with media. So there's a lot of that's up in the air, but we're working on something like that. But there's definitely some family interviews and some people from the family that people are going to hear from. I also want to point out from the chat, Montana makes a good point, and I agree with her. She says, I think it was problematic that Dolan stressed the importance of presenting the evidence rather than telling a story divorced from the evidence. But then Moore comes up right after and tells a fantastical story.
Absolutely. Could not agree more, Montana.
Yeah, and
That's a great point.
yeah, and I'll tell you that in what we're going to get this week, which is the state's rebuttal, Aki caught onto that as well.
Uh-huh.
And the other part about the issue I have with the narrative approach that Moore took too is I think what you run the risk of is if you say something that the jury doesn't buy, then I think it affects your credibility.
Sure.
Like even like and I mentioned that in Dolan's too, when Dolan talks about the garage door, like after Tim left, then he came back and then put accelerant on the body and lit it on fire again, and then went in and closed the garage door. I always worried like if the jury is like, mm, that sounds like nonsense, then will they think the rest of it is nonsense too?
Right. Right. Okay. So let's move into some specifics from the Facebook post. Speaking of the cell stuff that comes up in this episode, Kristen says, "Can you explain what you meant about the cell tower being connected to the guard device? I was very confused."
It's GAR device, and hopefully I got that right. I think I did. The device, they talk about it in Gillette's testimony. He talks about what it is and how it works. It's a device made by Gladiator, I believe, and it's a device that's connected to the car and computers and stuff. That's what they use to drive around when they're driving around to the drive test to gather all the data. Um, but it was, and I had never considered until Moore said that, and then also back from my conversations with Mike Dowd, our expert, and then other experts that I've talked to that weren't able to come on and do interviews, um, where they said all the time, like different phones have different, like you can have two phones right next to each other, and one will connect to one tower and one will connect to a different one because they have different external antennas, they have different internal antennas, and that got me thinking when Moore brought that up that these drive tests were done, like when they show they could find these tiny little spots where 523 could catch some coverage on 74. That was from the guard device, which from what I was able to find online, looks like they're like external antennas that are on the car. And it got me wondering, well, so that was able, something that might have a 12-inch external antenna could maybe make a connection to that tower from 8 miles away, but could, a Nokia with a 1-inch antenna inside the car make that same connection? And I'm not saying it can't. I'm saying we don't know because that wasn't done. And to be honest, the entire drive tests that were done are problematic, in my opinion, shouldn't have been allowed to begin with because they were done 10 years later. They can, they can say that, they said, Verizon says basically the towers, everything is essentially the same. First of all, I don't think that's entirely true.
Mm.
Second of all, even if nothing changed with the towers, what did change for sure was the phones that are connecting to the tower, buildings around the towers, there, construction. There's all these different things that have changed, over the 12 years between when the crime happened and when the Gladiator report was done and made. I don't see how, when I think back on it, how is that even allowed to be used as evidence? You can't say, I checked the cell coverage in an area 12 years later, and that's what we're going to use to prove where these guys were at. That's crazy to me that they were able to do that. Um, so, and then even think like in 2006, 3G was just coming out, right? That a 3G signal. By 2018, 4G, their 4G LTE was, they're different I don't see how they can say nothing changed. Something
Right.
changed.
Right.
The types of signals that were coming off those towers have changed. And I don't, and again, I'm not an expert, so I don't know. Maybe those have the exact same range and everything between a 3G and a 4G or LTE or now 5G, but it seems very, very strange to me that that was even allowed in. But to get
And
back
it
to the,
was yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask if the defense brought up any of that
I think just what you saw in the closing,
just in
just the fact
closing.
that there was no phones ever used. But and that gets back to the root of the question. That's what I meant was,
Right.
they were driving around with a device connected to a car, um, not driving around with a phone in a car.
I mean, you
Um,
would think that would come up in cross when they were actually speaking to when that part of the, like, trial was happening.
yeah, and I'd have to go back and review the testimony's up on our website, but I'd have to go back and review the testimony. My guess is if it came up in cross, they may they may have just asked the question, "Did you ever use a phone?" Um,
Right.
or anything like that. But I don't recall that because it was because and I say that because it jumped out at me when I was
Yeah.
reading Moore's
Yeah.
closing when he said it. I'm like, oh my god! Like besides, and Chris in the chat mentions too, like on top of that, like traffic patterns, growth, everything changed over that time, which is exactly right. Um, but then jumped out at me that yeah they had never used phones, so I don't know how. And by the way, that can be the same for Bodmer's drive test. How in the hell do they take a drive test done 12 years after the fact to tell you how long it would have taken in a different vehicle with a different driver, how they were able to allow to use that to tell the jury how long it would have taken Robert and Christian in an Acura 12 years earlier
Right.
to make that drive. That's bananas too. I don't get how any of that was allowed.
And that would have been in pretrial. The lawyers would have said, like, Your Honor, we argue that you can't even admit this in. You shouldn't be allowed to do this, which makes
Yeah.
me wonder, like, just in general. I mean, you don't always hear about this in cases, but certainly in cases where people have taken a hard look at, and when there's been, tape of or in-depth conversations about things like the OJ trial or something, people do talk about the preferences or the preferential treatment that some people perceive was shown to the prosecution or to the defense
Hmm.
in those various cases. So that's not something we've really talked about much for this case, but just those little moments that build up, if it's, if you can see that a judge is kind of showing preferential treatment to the prosecution
Yeah.
in
And
terms of
I
where the
know that,
objections and sustainings and all those sort of things happen.
yeah, and I know that in this case, there was a lot of the defense took a lot of L's in pretrial. One of them being alternate suspects.
Right.
They were fighting to be allowed to bring up alternate suspects, and they just got shot down by the judge.
Right. Carrie says there has been a lot of talk of phone calls made. Do we know if Robert or Christian tried to call Becky's cell phone after the fire to help look for her? I'm assuming kind of along the same lines as like Adnan never called, hey, again, that kind of
Right.
argument maybe. Even if her cell was destroyed in the house, her voicemail would be still be active within the carrier system.
Yeah. No. There's no records of Robert ever trying to call her. I think so. Remember the Robert's first in a world where Robert's innocent.
Hmm.
His first word he knew that there was any issue. So again, I'm not asking you to believe he's innocent, but just imagine it for this scenario. That he had nothing to do with this. So that would mean that he spent Sunday night with her blowing up his phone and him ignoring all of her calls. And then he gets up in the morning, and then the first call he gets is from Javier, um, telling him like there was a fire, there's all this going on, I can't get a hold of her, I'm going up there. Goes up there and he's getting all the updates from Javier that there's people dead and her car's there, so on and so forth. Um, that would be if in a world where Robert was innocent, that would be where things would stand with him, and he didn't make any calls. Now that said, Javier after that, I think did still try to make calls. And I think he'd said at one point that he just wanted to hear her voice on the voicemail. And I think even Jacob tried. Well, Jacob is a little different because Jacob was calling her. He just got like some information from Javier, didn't know what was going on, and
Yeah.
then he started calling Becky
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for her
Yeah.
during that day. But no, the short answer to the question is no. Robert never tried to call her after that.
Okay. Uh, let's get into the hair and the lighter. Chris says, was the area where the green lighter was found photographed the night of the murder? Could this really have been missed? Family, friends, and neighbors must have been all over the scene in the week since this info was found.
I wasn't I have not seen any photos of the lighter even in place where it was found. It's just another like the report says it was at the intersection of the driveway and Alpine Drive, northwest of there on the Freedley property, is where this lighter was found. There's a file of pictures that are their title is like Pablo and sifting through scene or whatever, and that's where these photos were found. And like we see one picture of the lighter and it's like set on a piece of paper or something to take a picture, but they never photographed it in place, so I don't know where it was found. But that's a good point. It'd be worth because there are some pictures out at the end of the driveway of like the fire trucks and stuff.
Hmm.
um be interesting to see if it's out there, but there's no way to know. If we had a photo showing like it's right there, then absolutely we could go look at some of those pictures and find that exact spot, but all we
Hmm.
know is it was somewhere over there.
Hmm.
um so we don't really know where it was at. Did they ask something about the hair too, or is it just the lighter they were asking about?
This is just my section of, questions that came in that I organized that have to do with either
Okay.
the hair or the lighter or both. Tracy says, did anyone say if they found footprints on the north side of the house where the hair and lighter were found? They made such a big deal about the footprints going out into the desert where the wheelbarrow track was, but I can't remember if they said anything about any other prints around the back of the house.
No, and remember that's what we've been complaining about since the beginning is there's a
Yeah.
path from that back porch or the back door, which is where the back door is, and two, the area where was kind of the escape route that was planned out that we heard about from Drew, where they would escape, but that would also come down on that back porch. There's a bay window right there that they use as kind of a step to get down from the roof if they you know went out the upstairs window, and there's a path directly from that back door to directly where the body in the wheelbarrow was found. And we have no pictures of that path. Now granted, there's a lot of firefighter tracks and stuff in there, but we have like it was never searched for evidence. They never used luminol, nothing to look for blood, nothing along that. So there were tracks all over the place from the firefighters.
Right.
So after the fact, I don't think footprints would be super helpful in that area. Um,
Okay.
but obviously, if you found a pair of tennis shoe prints, not fire boots, that would be worth noting at least. My issue with that was always like at least go through that area and spray luminol and see if you can find any blood. But
Right.
they didn't.
Right. Kristen says, could the hair on lighter have been tested, but the results weren't shared with the defense?
I'd hate to speculate on that. I mean, anything's possible. Um, and if that was the case, then that would obviously be a massive, massive Brady violation. But I don't see any evidence that they do. Someone had mentioned to me um, that there was a clump of hair found in a brush, in a hairbrush, I
Mm-hmm.
think from one of the cars
Hmm.
that they had taken. We're going to test to use for DNA to try to ID Vicky's body, but it wasn't used for that. So there's I need to track that down and figure that out. But this was not hair on a brush. This was just like somewhere north in the north side of the house was this clump of hair. That's all we know, and I have no record of it ever being tested.
Okay. Well, Kim had followed up and mentioned the Brady possibility and even said, can the prosecution not proceeding with testing items that could have been exculpatory grounds be grounds for an appeal?
No, no, not unless they're. And again, I'm not a lawyer, um, but my understanding is it could only be used as grounds for an appeal if they now were to do testing on it and it was exculpatory. And I want to make clear too, like there were, of course, there were people that were like just mad about bringing it. I had people tell me it's ridiculous for me to even suggest that this hair could be anything of any importance. I'm not saying that it is. What I'm saying is it could be, and we should know. Like
Right.
that's the story of this entire case. The whole thing is we don't know if Robert and Christian's alibis checked out because they never checked. They never looked. They never tried to find out. We don't know if this hair is relevant because it was never tested. It was never checked out. We don't know if the lighter was relevant because it was never tested. It was never checked out. The scenario I gave in the episode is just like here's one way this could have went. You find DNA profiles on the socks. It everybody we know is excluded. Robert, Christian, I believe Ron, Javier, Jacob. They're all excluded as contributors from that DNA. So okay, that in my opinion, very likely is your killer's DNA, but we don't know who it belongs to. They never run that through CODIS to see if they can find out who it belongs to. But then you also have this hair here. Well, how much more relevant would it be? Certainly, I think anybody being objective can agree it's not out of the question for for Becky to have yanked a chunk of hair out of her attacker's head. That's not unreasonable at all for something to happen. It happens all the time in cases like this. But imagine if they had tested that for DNA. We still don't know who it is, but we know that that hair came from the same person that touched her sock. Now, how much more? Now, is there a case against Robert and Christian at all? Probably not. And then throw the lighter in. What if we find in the lighter there's DNA there that matches one or either of those or both of those? You know, and I'm not saying that's the case. What I'm saying is we should know if that's the case. And I sincerely hope that the defense teams are working with the DA to do some DNA testing to get some of these answers.
Mm-hmm. Montana says, what would it have taken for the defense to do any testing on any items?
They would have had to have requested it. I don't know exactly how that process would work, but they should have been able. But the problem is too, like they don't know what all. Well, they do because they get discovery at some point before the trial that tells them all the stuff that was collected. This file that we have is the discovery file.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think they would have had to request for the state to test certain evidence, and then that information would have to be brought up. But
Mm.
obviously, they didn't.
Maury says, I think it's only very recently that hair could be tested without the root. Does this hair have roots? And if not, could that have factored into why it wasn't tested?
We don't know if it has roots because all we have is one picture of it and
Mm-hmm.
a note in the report that it was there and a note that it was barcoded and put into evidence and it was never tested. So, but yes, there are, if not then, now you can do DNA testing uh, uh, without a root. on hair,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that, like in the West Memphis 3 case, that we're hoping, would be nice if we could do some of that, because there was hair testing done on some hairs, but they weren't able to get full profiles because they didn't have nuclear DNA on them, or they didn't have a root. Well, now they can get full profiles. And on the topic of DNA, somebody, Bob in the chat, said that, and this is another thing I keep hearing, was that my DNA expert said that you couldn't put the DNA from the sock into CODIS, and I've heard over and over again that it's YSTR DNA, and you can't put that through CODIS. Some of the DNA was YSTR DNA, but as per, per,
Porphyria?
porphyria,
Porphyria?
yeah, yes. As she knows, there was both YSTR and autosomal. I can't speak today.
Mhm.
I speak words for a living. That's what I do, but not today. And the autosomal that word can be run through CODIS. There's no question about this. There are some of those profiles are rock solid profiles that have enough data to be put into CODIS, and the examiner that found the DNA at the bottom said that it checked the box. I had to make sure to say they checked the box and didn't write this. They checked the box that it is ready to be uploaded to CODIS. It
Okay.
just didn't.
And yeah, as Jennifer pointed out in the Facebook follow-up chat, we don't even know if the hair was human or synthetic.
Right. We don't know anything
I
about it.
mean, it
All
could
we
have
know is
been a wig,
clump
it
of
could have been a
hair.
costume. Yeah, it could have. Yeah. And it
And it was
does look
shocking.
singed. It certainly looks singed to me, but again,
Yeah.
that's just by eyeballing a photograph.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It looked like part of it was singed. And that's why it's a huge deal. And again, it could turn out that it's nothing.
Right.
But this hair, it clearly wasn't, like, in my opinion, is absolutely not from one of the victims. Just based on the color and length, it's not Becky or Ron or John's.
Mhm.
Vicky, we have pictures of Vicky as blonde. We have picture of Vicky with brown hair. We have pictures of Vicky with her hair dyed red. So, who knows if it could be Vicky's and it's longer. But we know that Vicky's hair and head was like, this did not come off Vicky's body,
Right.
unless it was like yanked out in a struggle outside somewhere. My
Right.
theory on it is it was probably that hair was probably found outside. It was close enough to the fire that some of it got singed, but it
Mhm.
wasn't in the fire, because it would have just been completely burned away if it was inside the house. And we see the conditions of the bodies that were in it. Well, I mean, you guys haven't seen the conditions. I can
Right.
when you have entire legs and arms just burnt away, there's not hair left at the end of that process. Um,
Understood.
so it could be. Is there a possibility that it could be maybe Vicky's if there was some struggle outside? You can't rule that out as a possibility, but to me, like, that's a huge find. Like, we have Becky, who in my opinion was the surprise here. I think Moore was pretty close in his I agree pretty much with what he said about how Becky came into this, which was they didn't know she was there. We talked about that months ago. um and that if she's missing the shoe, we don't know how she died. If there was a struggle, like, that could have been just laying right on the back porch, because you also see, like, there's not a bunch of debris and stuff on that, like, the paper,
Mhm.
whatever they take the picture on. So I, d- I don't think this was sifted, right? So I don't think they took a clump of ash, wet ash, and sifted through and found this hair there. To me, it looks like that hair was probably, somewhere out near that area in the north side of the house, but it was probably just laying on the ground, because, like, how would you see? It's black, and if you
Right.
sifted it, it wouldn't stay in that clump together, and it would be filled with debris. Like, I think it was probably found right there, like, in the area where I think the struggle with Becky happened.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't. I mean, again, I just can't really tell anything from the picture. It looks like it could be synthetic to me, but I know there was also a thread on Facebook mentioning that some killers are known to wear disguises, are known to disguise their appearances, and even just
Yeah,
the evidence that someone was in disguise is could potentially be interesting.
yeah. Hey, if we test and find out it's synthetic hair, so be it.
Right.
But this shouldn't be a question. That's my point,
Okay.
is this
Yeah.
shouldn't still be a question in 2023, whether or not that was real hair or synthetic hair, or
Yeah.
who it belongs to, or if there was DNA in it. This shouldn't be a question now.
Yeah. Moving into the lighter, Sarah says, how dangerous is it to light gasoline using a lighter? I'm wondering what the chances are that the person might have gotten burned if they used a lighter like this to start the fire.
Well, you have to remember that the fire started with something, right? So you kind of narrow that down to a match or a lighter. One possibility is taking a match and just flinging it in there. Um, and the other one would be a lighter. And there's several different ways that can happen safely. And that would be, you know, pouring a trailer, which means, you know, so you fill the house with gas and then you just like pour a little line of it to the outside. You light the very end of it, the fire runs in and explodes. Or using the lighter to light, say, you know, a wad of newspaper or something else, or a stick to throw it in there. Like it, but there has to be. It doesn't have to necessarily be the thing that touched the fire to the gasoline, but somehow the fire had to start, and that's either with a lighter or a match. I think it's just as likely as one as the other.
Okay. Kate says about the lighter, Bob stated the police fire department kept people away from the scene, but didn't the neighbors get close to the house? Did Tim or the others smoke and just have them slip out of pocket?
I don't know. Again, it's a question that we could easily answer.
Right.
Yeah, I have no, but yeah, I mean that before the police got there, yeah, the neighbors were all standing at the end of the driveway, and again, we don't know where the lighter was found. Was it 20 feet into the property? Was it 1 foot into the property? We don't know exactly where it was at. Uli in the chat says, "What does processed material mean?" The key was found in the processed material back there too. The processed material, I think, is the way I took it from reading the report is they were as they were sifting through debris, they were putting all the stuff that they had sifted through or processed into kind of a pile behind the house. Um, so that's what I took as process material. I do have a picture. I should put the picture up of it, but because I saw like it said they found two keys on a chain in the process material too,
Mm-hmm.
and I was pretty excited about that. I found it because I was thinking, is that Becky's car keys? So it's not. It's like a long chain and then like keys to like a cheap lock, like you'd have, like a suitcase type lock,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. It had two keys like that on it, or
Okay.
could go to like a gun cabinet or something like that. I don't know, but those are like very clearly they're clumped up. There's debris on them. There's chunks on them, and that's something if you were sifting through ashes that you know you would find during the sift, unlike the hair. So that's the confusing part, Uli, too, is like with the hair, as I was just mentioning. Like I certainly don't think it was like buried in a pile of wet. Because remember that I've done this hundreds of times in my life. It's a shitty job.
Mm.
You know, when you're done, you have ashes and stuff that's all been soaked with water, and it's wet and nasty and clumpy, and you sift through it. You know, a lot of, you know, we're looking for electrical components and things like that to reconstruct the crime scene. There's just, in my opinion, there's no way that hair came out of something like that. I think it was. He said it was found back in the pile of processed material, um, but I don't. I personally, I don't think that it was like sifted through in the ashes. I think it was just back there.
Regarding the socks, Veronica says, not related to the episode, but I saw a comment saying Javi's DNA was tested against the RNA on Becky's socks. We just talked about this, but Veronica didn't remember if that had been established, and wanted to get that confirmed or denied. And then Karina weighed in and said she thought that it was the episode with the DNA expert. But I just wanted to toss this in there in case you knew right off the top of your head if
Well,
that's
can
where to
you? I'm
find it.
sorry. Can you repeat the beginning of that a little bit?
That the uh, Veronica saw a comment saying that Javi's DNA was tested against the DNA on Becky's socks,
Oh,
but
yes.
Veronica did not remember that being established and was looking for to be pointed in the direction of where that had existed, if it was in what episode it was in.
Yeah, I can't point you to. It was the episode or the follow up after when we had Susanna Ryan, the DNA expert, on, because in the report when she was reading through it, it didn't show that it was compared to anyone. And then I think during the course of that next week, I found more documents and sent them to her, and that's where we saw that they had compared it to. So it is established. Um, Robert, Christian, Javier, Jacob, all the victims, and I think Ron Friedley were all ruled out as contributors of the DNA on the socks.
Mm.
That was established.
And Bo also?
Possibly.
Yeah,
Pretty much everybody that, yeah, I think he was, because I remember saying that, because of course people were like, well, that DNA must have been transferred from the, you know, socks grab DNA from everywhere,
right.
which, you know, is true, but not in profiles like that, and it's not certainly the most likely scenario of how that DNA got there. Um, I do recall like anyone we know that had been to that house anytime recently had been ruled out.
Yeah. But Teresa just brought up in the chat that it's perhaps the keys could have been locker keys to Denny's if, in fact, they had lockers. That's an
It could
interesting
be.
idea.
For those of you that are in the live stream and anybody listen to this later can go check it out. But I will put the pictures of the keys. Excuse me. I will put the picture of the keys in the case documents for episode 59. Um, I meant to do that and I just forgot to put it in.
Okay. I'm going to just read part of Lana's, sorry, Lana, uh, comment, essentially saying, I'm just really struggling over this lack of testing the evidence. It just seems like such a crazy thing to not do. And this continues to raise concerns from Lana about something political happening here. About, kind of circling back to all the law enforcement connections in the
Mm-hmm.
case and wondering if there's a connection there between a lack of testing or a lack of work done and all of these different people at play and factors at play.
There are a lot of theories out there about corruption and people covering a cover up or covering for someone. I that's the last place I want to go unless I have evidence of that happening. It seems like there was it certainly seems like there was kind of a construed effort to kind of protect Javier. But I don't think that makes Javier guilty, right? So, his
Right.
dad was worked in the DA's office. There was a whole thing about the immunity, and of course, his mom was, which is a weird thing. I can't imagine that here, but it must have been a big deal there because everyone we talked to was like, Javier's mom was a politician down in the like it always comes up, So like, and people are like, Bonnie Garcia's son. So like, even with teenagers, always said like Bonnie Garcia's son. Um, so it definitely seems like I would put it this way: Javier had a support group, a group of people that support him that were actively trying to protect him. But I don't think that it just doesn't raise any red flags with me because I haven't seen anything to me to indicate that Javier had anything to do with this crime. Um, so I think there may be a political angle. There's certainly a political angle about why this case got prosecuted at all. It was like re-election time, and with Hestron and Zellerbach, there was all the stuff and the stolen campaign signs and all that, and people trying to solve this big case to get a big win. The cold case unit, like there was a lot of reasons for that. Um, but I just don't think that there was. My personal opinion, I think Leclerc was an idiot, is what I think. Like, I don't think Leclerc was like, oh well, we don't want to test that DNA because that could be this person or that person, or this was an inside job with the police department, and I don't think it was anything like that. I think he was just terrible at his job.
Hmm.
Um, my personal opinion, unless I see something to indicate otherwise, that there's some kind of corruption to that level where there was like an intentionally hiding evidence at the beginning at the times when all this stuff should be. I just I don't think that he has the intellect to even plan something like that.
Just circling back to the people whose DNA was tested, Porphyry, I just wanted to clarify out of curiosity, Austin was never one of the people who was sort of on the radar for testing
I
evidence against.
saw that and I don't
I
remember.
thought we talked about them taking his DNA and
He
that you
did. He
confirmed that
did.
they did. Yeah, they did get his DNA, but
Yeah, and I don't want to say yay or nay to that because I don't remember off the top of my head if Austin's DNA was tested against the sock DNA or not.
got it. Kathy says if someone was able to pull up, I love this comment. Kathy says if someone was able to pull up the weather/moon for that day and night, is it also possible to pull up reports from the fire department to see if they made any more specific notes about the make and model/year of the red truck, or to pull up vehicle ownership records for that time period and area, like the search for the white Elantra in the Idaho case? And then Kathy finishes with, I'm trying to establish my identity as the obsessed with the red truck lady.
I mean, certainly law enforcement could do things like um, pull up who. But first of all, no, I don't think there is any more information on the red truck. I mean, we heard Williams testify about it. We see his report about it. Like it's all red truck, white bed. I believe he said one person in it. Smaller truck. That's all we know about it. Yeah, there's a world where law enforcement could, and again, that it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's not that big of a community. Like what should have been, before they have to worry about any of that, like narrowing down who owns red trucks, they could have just knocked on the doors of the people that live in that community and asked them, "Hey, do you know who owns this truck? Have you ever seen a red truck with a white bed?" It would have been that simple. And again, it's just a big drop ball.
Right. Chris W says, Barbara Wright says she arrived home not long after the fire started. Did anyone report seeing her car? If no one saw her coming up the hill, isn't it plausible that neighbors didn't see anyone leaving?
Whose car did we not see come up the hill?
Barbara Wright says she arrived home not long after the fire started.
Oh, right. And if nobody saw her car, the
Right.
first of all, somebody else made a post about this on the fan page the other day, that I keep saying there was no car that left the scene because nobody saw it. And then they had compared that to, like, well, we know there was a red truck and nobody saw that red truck either. So I want to make clear, my point is, there's no evidence that anyone left in a car, right? You're working off a presumption of innocence. What evidence do you have that someone left in a car? No one said they saw a car. Also, it's kind of apples and oranges, because the red truck, and I'm going to get back to Barbara Wright's car, the red truck was found, or was spotted, way down in the south end of the neighborhood, nowhere near the crime scene. It was headed in the direct, they say heading away from the crime scene. It was just, the crime scene was north of it and it was headed south. It wasn't like it was like, zipping around the corner from the crime scene. And no one down there was questioned if they saw a car. So the only people that were questioned were the people that were alerted to the fire early and were headed to the scene at that time, and the immediate neighbors right there were the ones that were spoken to. Those people didn't see any vehicle. Now, Barbara Wright, she was heading towards the crime scene on the east side of the neighborhood and came up. She was, she was on Alpine Drive for just to turn that quick little corner right there, way east of the crime scene. We don't know if other people saw her car because they didn't ask anyone if anybody saw her car. So when I'm talking about nobody seeing a vehicle up there, you have from like 9:40, according to the Captain Williams, on, people that are looking like, oh shit, there's a fire. They're looking at it. They're calling 911. They're driving towards it, and no one sees a vehicle driving away from it. Nobody sees a vehicle driving on Alpine Drive. And I should qualify that too. No one says they saw a vehicle. Shockingly, what's never asked any of them in any of their interviews is, did you see a car leaving the crime scene? Did you see a car on Alpine Drive? None of them are ever asked that question. Now, I, common sense wise, would think, if there was this arson and triple homicide and you were there right at the beginning and you saw a car driving away from the crime scene, that you would mention, I saw a car driving away from the crime scene. I cannot imagine anyone would not bring that up if they had seen it. But the difference is, with Barbara Wright, she's heading not away from, but towards a crime scene, way over on the east side of the neighborhood, before anyone was alerted to the fact that there was a fire. No one was looking, no one was suspicious, and it certainly, I wouldn't think, would stick out in anybody's mind if they look out and see a fire and happen to see a car driving towards the crime scene and going to a
Right.
different house.
Right. Right. Fair enough.
Real quick,
Oh, sure.
just to catch up with the chat, Montana is in the chat, wanted to know, is back to, you were talking about DNA. She said, why did
Mm,
they go to a private lab for DNA testing? Was there a wait if they had gone with the DOJ lab? Yeah, that was one of the weird things that were pointed out by, I think, Dolan and Moore, was the DNA stuff was taken to the DOJ lab, and then they said it was going to be like, I don't remember, 4 months or something, or a certain amount of weeks. It was going to take a long time to get the DNA testing. Um, so then they took it back and then sent it to a private lab, which took. I mean, they pulled sector data a year later. And again, I'm not even claiming there's corruption. Like, oh well, instead we're gonna pay, because I don't think they knew who they wanted to arrest at that point. But it's a
mhm.
weird excuse. Like, oh, we don't want to wait 4 months for this DNA, so we're gonna send it somewhere else and spend $20,000 to have another lab do it. That still, we didn't get results back until about the same time we would have got the results back from the other place. And then also, we only got Becky's, or the Friedley home phone record for 48 hours because it costs $150 a day, and we don't want to pay any more for that. Like, it's just a weird disconnect. But yeah, Montana, that was the reason they gave, was that it was going to take too long at the DOJ lab, so they sent it from They sent it to a private lab. And regarding you mentioned the moon thing, and a few people are talking about it wasn't the point of their question. But I do want to point out too, and people were talking about the moon phases, because I saw a post on Facebook where people were regarding the car, right? They were
Hmm.
talking about, somebody said, well, they would have driven with the lights off. There are no street lights up there.
Oh, you can't do that.
Yeah, there's no street lights up there. And somebody had pointed out what the moon phase was. It's even more important to point out there was no moon. So regardless of what the moon phase was, moonrise was, off the top of my head, I want to say 4 in the morning, maybe it was 2 in the morning,
Hmm.
but the moon was not in the sky at the time of the murders. So it was pitch black. No, and that's one of the reasons, again, like, even if headlights were off and it was just brake lights, they would stick out like a sore thumb up there, because it was so dark if somebody was leaving. And then if your theory is, well, maybe it was Robert and Christian and they left and they just kept their lights off, let's go back to that drive test time now, when you have to
Right.
drive out of that neighborhood in those roads in the pitch black with no headlights on.
Right. Yeah, if this was planned, um, and anybody planning it knew the area and knew that, I would imagine that that person or people would build into their plan that they could not drive out of that site without it being an issue, and that you would sort of plan
Yeah.
to not be in a car for at least some portion of the immediate vicinity around the house. But
Yeah. And again, when you get back to like the red truck and even Barbara Wright, you have to understand where the Friedleys lived, where John and Becky lived, was almost the most remote area of that. So down where the red truck is seen, there are, I don't know, 50, 100 houses north of there. I don't know, 50, I'm guessing. But there's a bunch of houses north of there, and a bunch of different roads and stuff. So to see a car headed south at that point wouldn't stick out in your mind, because it could have come from anywhere, any one of those houses. But the crime scene is on the farthest north street, on the north side of the road, in the dead center, away from other roads. It's way out there. So seeing a car driving down that part of Alpine Drive, there's like 4 houses. Look in the aerial maps. Like it is very different to see a car driving down Alpine Drive at 10 o'clock at night than it is to see one down by Buckthorn where that other car was seen.
right. Valeria commented, something struck me when I heard Moore's summary of the Friedleys' escape plan. Quote, something goes wrong, you go out the window. Go out the back to the hills. Valeria says, I went back to look at Drew's interview and she said she felt, quote, unsafe up there. And again, that the plan was to run toward the mountain or to a neighbor. What was this escape plan for? It makes no sense to me if there's a fire either in the house or in the desert.
I don't know if this is something that was told to me, so it may not be accurate, or if it was that I read in one of the interviews, but my understanding in my mind was this went all the way back to the days when Ron lived there and he was a working police officer. And the plan was always like, if something happened because of Ron's connections to law enforcement and the fact that, there's criminals that don't like him, because remember the whole Trapini thing with the murder out there, that he came to his house. They were, buying guns for, Tiffany had said something about him buying guns from him or storing guns from him. So my understanding was always that it had to do with that. Like if something ever goes down because of something related to Ron's work, then it's go out the window, go out the back, and then run back into the hills. That
Hmm.
was my understanding of it. But if somebody who has some time on their hand wants to search back through those interviews and see if you can confirm that. But that was my understanding of it.
Gotcha. Teresa says, and we're almost done, could either of the defense attorneys mention that there were previous charges that were dropped and point out the new or additional evidence that came in with this trial? They didn't have Jeremy Witt. I think the drive test by Bodmer and the cell coverage maps with the GAR device is what was new.
Yeah, so I missed what the question was with that.
Could either of the defense attorneys mention that there were previous charges? So, in other words, could the defense attorneys at closing say, and
Oh,
by the way, these guys were
no.
charged before? Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that. I mean, there's so many rules about even bringing up somebody's past offenses or anything like that, anything that might prejudice the jury. And I will say without searching through it that I can almost guarantee that they were not allowed to bring up the fact that the state had already dropped the case once.
Okay.
I seriously doubt that's the case.
Jason says, "Are we going to hear any of the defense team's private investigators interviews?"
I don't have any of those interviews. What I have is the state's discovery file, the file that the state presented as discovery.
Okay. Valeria says, "Can you share a copy of the images/video reconstruction of the house made by Uli Sang and Dylan?" Oh, I just shouted out your last name. You don't usually do that, Uli. Sorry. Even
Um,
though it's on Facebook.
let me here make sure you clean this up, Kelly. Yeah, as a matter of fact, so Uli and Dylan and I are in a group chat on Facebook about when they were making that, and Uli brought it up last week, and Dylan said that he could email it to me. I don't think I've seen that email, but I'll touch back on that again, um, to see if we can get that, because what he did is he put together like a CAD design of the house, and at least in the version that I think he was going to make it into like a movie, because the version I had, you were able to like drag and move around to see like how the house was laid out based on what we can reconstruct based on drawings and the crime scene photos.
Okay. Um, and then I just wanted to acknowledge that, there were people who really enjoyed you getting very angry in the episode. Uh, so they want you to feel free to do that. And in fact, Rosalind says, "Can we change the theme music to Y'all Gonna Make Me Lose My Mind by DMX? Because that's what rolls through my head every time Bob Ruff gets pissed and says he's going to lose it."
We were
Daisy,
discussing
thank
this
you.
in the Patreon hour before this. There was a little. I don't think anybody caught the little clunks that I had in there. Um, but I was writing the episode as I was in real time as I was going through the materials, and I had found the report about the hair. Also, I want to give another. I have already, but a big shout out to Valeria again,
Mm-hmm.
because Valeria just happened to a week before found the information about that lighter and brought it to my attention, is the only reason I ended up down this rabbit hole to begin with, because more in his cross, it says, she grabbed that green, they used that green lighter and started the fire. That jumped, like, I was like, oh, that's the lighter that Valeria was talking about. Had she not done that, there's a good chance, the way my brain works, I would have read right past that and not just thought he was just making up a lighter, not that they had actually found one on the scene. But so I was down that rabbit hole, found the report about the hair, and then wrote this whole thing about how we don't know anything about the hair. Got way down further into the script, and then ran down that rabbit hole and found like the picture of the hair and all that. And so everything from the first moment I mentioned the hair until like that next break was not in the script. That was just me finding it and just going off about it. Which it was, you may note me going, that hair, the most logical thing is it could be Becky's. And then a little while later, you hear me going, it can't be Becky's. It's because of the order of when I wrote it
Right.
and when I just kind of lost it. So anyway, um, I, it definitely makes me want to lose my mind too. I was every
Well,
single day of this case is killing me.
I know. I know. I will say, and maybe this is not appropriate to say, but I always get uncomfortable when you say things like calling Leclerc an idiot, because to me that feels so personal, and in my head I'm like, well, we've already explained that this is a shoddy investigation. That just seems like a personal attack, but I guess I'm
It
just
is.
saying that on
It
behalf
is, and it's
of,
not.
yeah,
It's
I
probably
understand. I understand. But
and it's
I
and
know
I will
that's probably,
acknowledge.
yeah. Yeah.
I will acknowledge that's not very nice of me to do, to tell you that I feel that way. And truthfully, I probably shouldn't. A good journalist wouldn't. Thankfully, I'm not a
Maybe that's
journalist.
why I bristle
Yeah,
sometimes.
I just, as you guys know, I will to tell you how it is and tell you how I
I
feel.
know.
And listen, you guys hear 2 hours of me talking every week. I spend 60 hours buried in this file, and that's what you get for, because like when I'm looking at all the things we could know and we don't know, and you're trying to find a reason why. Like, give me a reason. Give me, for Christ's sake, give me a good reason why we don't know these answers. And that good reason every time just lands on because the lead investigator didn't do his job. That's why I think he's an idiot. But that's just my personal
I
opinion.
know. Well, I'm in the minority. I'm in the minority,
I don't
and
think you
so
are. I don't think you are. I'm
no,
sure
I
there's
no,
plenty of people
it's
that.
been made clear to me already in the chat, but please don't laugh because that's tone deaf, and I understand myself to be that. Please cut all of that out, Kelly. Uh, anyway, so that's what I have for it this week. Thanks everybody for all of your amazing feedback. The one thing that we did want to make sure we did not miss, and thanks Jennifer and Valeria for making sure I remember this, is that we did want to wish Robert Pape a very happy birthday, as happy as you can experience one if you
Hmm.
are in prison for something you didn't do. Um, that if that's biased, sorry. I feel like we've already established that that is the point of view of this podcast.
Yeah, and so his birthday was yesterday, right? Which, when you're hearing this, was Tuesday. Um, and look for Valeria on Facebook if you want to, because she's helped organize some messages from listeners and stuff to send to Robert. So all that's going on. Yeah, and I think it's a good one to wrap up. Um, Hang on, let me clean this up a little better, because I was going to make a snarky, sarcastic remark to someone in the chat, and I decided not to. I've decided to be the bigger person. So let me. All right, so that is all we have for today. We're going to wrap things up. Make sure that you tune in on Sunday, when we're going to finally wrap up the trial. We get the final word heard by the jury, which was the state's rebuttal by Aki. And it's a little bit different presentation than you're used to. You're going to get the full context of everything that Aki said to the jury before they went in to deliberate. Tune in on Sunday for that. Everybody, make sure you tell Zach to get well, so that he can be back next week.
Yeah, get well soon, Zach. We miss you.
Yep. And we'll see everybody. Love all you guys. Thank you guys all in the YouTube chat and for your Facebook questions. And we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Hit stop on our record. You can hit stop on your audio. And then we'll
Done.
chat with the YouTube here for a minute. If anybody has any super chats they want to pop in there, we try to. There was a good chat going on today, and I found myself just, I think, 3 times I had to ask you to repeat the question, because I was reading the. What was getting me was a bunch of people were saying Amy 100, which, you know, my feelings about 100. You tried to text me that last week.
Yeah.
So I was trying to go back and see, what did Amy say? And now I just found it. Amy said, bottom line, it was a bungled investigation and a miscarriage of justice for everyone involved. Becky, Vicky, John deserved better, and Christian and Robert got screwed. 100% agree with that, Amy. 100, I would say to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and Jennifer Hill says it's for Zach to stop being sick.
Yeah, no
Um,
joke.
Anything else we missed in there? Don't see anything. And we're going to wrap this up. We're doing, for those of you that just love to watch us talk nonsense live, the Distinguished Shit Show will be live tomorrow, or the still trying to figure out what that is, but Jan and I are going to live stream, talk about some kind of nonsense tomorrow. What do we say, 9 o'clock your time?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Western time. That's what I'm
Yeah.
going to start calling it. Uh,
Western time. Yeah.
Western time.
Great.
We'll be on here, so feel free to jump in. If you're looking for something serious, that's not the place to go. We're just goofing around. We just
Yeah.
goof around on the YouTubes on those lives. Jason's, hang on, a quick question. Earlier, when it was mentioned that Christian said he thought her body was in a dumpster, were there pics of the dumpster in the paper? Good question. I don't know if there were pictures of the dumpster in the paper, but there was definitely video of the dumpster on the news.
I
Because
thought
remember
the
that.
dumpster turned out to be there was no dumpster. They put their trash in a
Well,
van or something.
it looked like a
I don't
dumpster,
remember.
though. Just
Okay.
north of the garage, they had
Gotcha.
like fence on 3 sides,
I see. I see.
and there might have even been a dumpster in there, but they just
Okay.
piled it up in there, and then they put it in the van to take it to the
Gotcha.
dump. They didn't have a
Gotcha.
pickup.
Gotcha.
But remember, that was absolutely featured in the news, the video news, because that's when Tiffany said she saw the picture of Robert laying out there and all the crap from the dumpster.
Gotcha.
She saw that on the news. So yeah, maybe that's where that came from. I'm sure the guilty crowd will think that doesn't mean anything. For me, that's, seems, unless he's a real good liar, seems like a good indication that he doesn't really know what was going on. It was just kind of piecing things together from what he had heard.
Right.
Thanks so much, Brian, for that super chat. All right. I think we answered all that, because Rena asked when the live is tomorrow. I think we already answered that. True Crime Buffet. Um, Teresa, love you guys. Miss Zach, he's my favorite. Thank you, Danielle, with the super chat. Says, love you guys. Miss Zach, He's my come on, man.
No, Danielle
No,
had to
he's
slip
not
that
your
in to make
favorite.
Bob mad.
Yeah, just for that, I'm gonna buy a cup of coffee with that $4.99 and drink it myself right in front of Zach. He won't care. He
Uh,
doesn't like coffee. Not a coffee guy. All right, I'm gonna stop this live chat. Thank you guys so much, everybody, for participating. Thank you for the super chats; those help out a lot. And we'll talk to you guys next week or tomorrow if you want to join in on the True Crime Live, the only true crime show on YouTube. It's not about true crime.
That's right.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
I think that stopped the live stream. Yeah.
You just missed. Chris said, "True crime, Bobsessed."
There it is. That's it.
Yeah, that's very funny.
I wanted to. That
That's very
fucking
funny.
Richard guy
Oh, that's the yeah.
kept making shitty comments.
I shouldn't have said that. I don't need more people from the listenership to turn on me, but I don't know. I just
one guy.
in my mind I'm like, ugh, I'm sure that's a reason that people are like, see, like he calls people assholes and idiots. That's so like Trump of him or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I worry, like
Oh
it's
man, why'd you say that? They're
it's
gonna
still
use
me
that.
trying to protect you. It's still me trying to protect you, but all that does is make everyone turn on me and be like, no, it's merited. I'm like, I can't win. I can't win. I'm the worst part of the podcast. Like I
You
laugh at
are
my own
not.
jokes and then I call you out on shit and I talk too much and we're more silent like Zach. Like I'm just having one of those weeks where I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I?
No. Listen,
No
I
one
wouldn't
wants me
allow.
here. It's fine. You want me here, and that's the
I will
only
not
reason
allow
I'm
you
here.
to change a thing. You are none of those things, and please don't take words that one person said to think that that's you. You are a valuable part of that. Listen, we could do without Zach. He's not here. We can be on as well.
Stop it.
No, kidding. We love
Poor
Zach.
Zach.
I miss.
We love our
He's an
Zach.
empty chair right there.
Yeah.
But no, don't. The fact that some people like me calling him an idiot, don't take that as an assault on you. I shouldn't really. Like I think about that. Like when I said it earlier in the day, I'm like, I shouldn't. But like I can't stop.
No,
I
I know.
hate
I know.
him. I
I
hate
know.
it, and it's a weird thing to say for somebody that I have never met in my life. But it's just like everything I'm reading in this case, I'm just like, dude, and not just for Robert and not what they did to Robert and Christian and their families, which is awful. But then I think too about Tiffany and Drew and
Of
Tanya and
course. Of
all of them. It's
course.
like they didn't get
No, I
justice.
don't disagree with you. I feel the same way. My problem is that my brain is so broken that the next thought I have is like, watch, we'll find out LeClaire had cancer and he was going through cancer treatment and he did a bad job. Do not argue that a bad job was done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just when we start saying people are stupid, in my mind I'm like, oh, this is going to come back to bite you in the end. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's like just things like that where it's like, oh, we did some name calling and then somebody comes back with like just the fucking zinger of like, actually, LeClaire was he had 50 cases and he was doing the best he could, and I'm like, of course, I'm sorry, I just I go to the worst case scenario of like,
Because you are the nicest
what don't
person
we
in the
know?
world. I am not the nicest person in the world. And to me,
I'm not
hey,
that nice.
I think it's if you were in LeClaire's shoes and some asshole from Michigan was talking about the work that you did, would you rather have them say he did a terrible job because he's an idiot, or he did a terrible job because he's corrupt?
Right. Yeah, sure.
I think
if I
idiot's
had
better.
to pick one of the two,
Idiot's better. I'm just
if I
dumb.
had to pick one of the two,
I'm just bad at my job. That's all. I'm just terrible at my job.
Yeah.
No, but it is one of those things with him where I'm just like, how can you explain this? This is the worst, and I've investigated some really bad investigations. This is the worst I've seen the corruption part. Like think Sandy Melgar case, like that was corrupt, and them intentionally trying to wedge that into her.
Yeah.
This is just like, here's all the very basic stuff they taught you in day one of detective school to do to investigate a case, and you didn't do any of it.
Yeah.
So I think he's an idiot. I keep saying it out loud.
You really do.
Yeah.
And I think, and what did I say? My conclusion was he had cancer. So I'm not looking too great either.
And the good news is, if that's the case, he survived it because he's still around now. He's still,
God bless.
yep.
God bless.
He got promoted. He got promoted after this.
Yeah. All
Seems like
right,
a good
buddy.
time to wrap things up. Patreon people, we love you guys. We love you guys so
Yeah.
much. Thank you for all of your
Thanks, everybody.
sincerely. Like you guys are with everything we got going on behind the scenes, business wise. You guys are a huge part of why we're able to keep doing this, and I can keeping Janet around so she can just have her heart broken by every negative comment. Look at her. There's it. She just ran out of energy. It's gone now. Oh, look at those beautiful blue eyes. All right.
All right.
Patreon people, we love you. Janet, I love you.
Love you guys. Love you, buddy.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.